Okay. Everyone ready?
I'm ready.
All right. Welcome to the Bayesian Conspiracy. I'm Eneasz Brodsky.
I'm Stephen Zuber.
I'm Jess Dickey.
And today we're going to be doing a bunch of listener feedback. Is going to take up most of it, but we didn't want to do just listener feedback for a full episode because, I don't know, that gets to be tiresome. So I'm also going to be kicking around a thing that I personally think is like a consequence of thinking about living in a simulation kind of stuff. I related it back to our Cyber Christianity episode when I was pitching it to my two co-hosts here. But really, I think it's just a... Now that I think about it, I think it's more of a revealing my own neuroses and mental issues. So I guess this might be an embarrassing episode for me.
Or we'll confirm or deny your neuroses. So.
Excellent. So yeah, I was thinking of calling this episode "Are You Jesus or Hitler?" So, which is basically what it comes down to.
Sounds like a loaded question.
The simulation argument being, to go over it again really quickly, if it's possible to simulate humans in the future, and if computing power gets much cheaper and more available, then it's going to be entirely likely that our far future ancestors may make a lot of simulations of the past to see how humanity evolved, to relive things like right now we don't actually know how ancient battles were fought. Like, we have some ideas and people try to reenact them, but ultimately no one wrote down like, this is what happens when two armies meet each other on a field. They just say the armies met and this many people were slaughtered, right? So it's really hard to say, like, go ahead.
I was just going to say, I remember in 2016 when the results from the last election came in, that I think it was previous guest on the show, Patrick Chapin, said that increased his probability that we're living in a simulation.
Right.
Because it struck him as so unlikely.
Yeah.
That, now I'm paraphrasing, but that reality TV show host and like confident rapist or 20-time alleged rapist Donald Trump would take his first debut into public service as president of the United States, and he's like, that's fucking crazy. This like, if I was gonna make a simulation, I'd be like, let's see what happens if we just put Donald Trump in the White House. Now that I've already derailed this, I haven't read any of the books in simulation hypothesis, mainly because I don't lose any sleep over it. But my main thing about it, like, again, having never like addressed the arguments properly, is this is assuming that, like, so to finish the argument is that if it seems likely, as you laid out, that our descendants may create simulations, then there will be more. If they make more than one, the sum total of universes has more simulated universes than real ones,
and so we're more likely than not in a simulation.
Exactly, but that's like assuming you to make simulations like exactly like this one, or like with the same laws of physics. And
if you wanted to like see how people do things, you would do that. Like the battle thing, for example, you'd have to have both realistic physics and realistic psychology.
Yeah,
like a lot of it is just historians not knowing, do people charge at each other in bloodlust? Do they stay like at arm's reach and try not to get hurt? Like, where does that tip over? What exactly happens? So,
and I think I'm trying to remember where I thought of this from, and it was much more eloquent when I first thought of it. Now it's not coming to me, but like the idea, someone pointed out like, oh, that would take too much computing power or something, and it's like, sure, in this physics,
yeah, right.
Yeah, you couldn't run our universe on your laptop, and you probably won't be able to run it on a laptop in 1,000 years. But like, that's just, I don't know. The other thing too is that you don't have to simulate the whole thing.
Yeah,
you can simulate. You can kind of do like what the young Earth creationists do, where it's like, oh, sure, the photons from distant stars were just like generated in the simulation. En route to Earth.
Right. A few hundred meters above the atmosphere.
Exactly.
You don't actually have to simulate the quantum foam, except for the few times where scientists are literally trying to figure out how the quantum physics works.
And then all you have to do is fuck with their results or their brains or something, right?
Well, or maybe you like realistically simulate that, and the simulation slows down for a few minutes while they crank through those heavy processes, and then people stop looking at it, so you go back to gross generalizations.
Now I just remembered...
it's like when you're playing a first-person shooter, it doesn't render the entire world, it only renders the part that you can see on your screen.
Yeah, there's no sense in rendering like in Skyrim, rendering everything down to the atom. Like things are just tables. Like you can't even break them into smaller bits. I think I remember, now we talked about simulation hypothesis at some point in the distant past on the show, because I'm remembering when I brought up Rick and Morty, how when the one where they're in a simulation, and then Rick's tearing apart that rat in the garage, and he's just like, this is such sloppy work. And
Right.
it could just be him being a drunk, crazy person, but the way that I kind of read that was like, oh, he's saying that this isn't even a good simulation, because on the inside, this rat isn't made properly. Like, real rats look different.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, so I have been talking a long time and I still don't know what we're talking about.
Oh, it's okay. Jess, do you have anything to add before we?
Not really. I
Oh.
was kind of thinking about the computing power thing, and then I was like, what if somebody's just simulating a whole bunch of consciousnesses and we're all just vividly dreaming?
Did you ever play Legend of Zelda Link's Awakening?
Mm-hmm.
And they're also remaking that for the Switch coming out, I
yeah.
think, at the end of the summer or something.
Okay.
So that's kind of like that game. I haven't played it since the early 90s, or maybe roughly when it was new, like mid to late 90s. So it's
Okay.
been like 20 years. But I
Yeah.
remember that
Yeah.
that being the plot. And as a kid, it was, trippy. So I'm curious how it'll be as a, an adult.
Yeah. Okay, so moving forward, as we were, that was a perfect segue, because as we were just talking about how, like, you don't necessarily want to simulate everything in total fidelity all the time, right? One of the things that might be very computationally expensive to simulate is humans. I'm not sure how true that is. A lot of time we just fall back on heuristics and kludges and don't think through things very much. But it's possible that if you're trying to really get into the mind of, like, Julius Caesar and see how he was running, then you're going to do your best to make sure, like, the individual neural connections are all simulated as faithfully as possible, right? And you're not like just you're running a few large rules. You're like, let's get this brain as detailed as you can, right? But you probably wouldn't be doing that for, I don't know, some of the Norsemen that he ran into in some of his earlier campaigns. Like, those will just, they're not rendered for most of the time. When he goes up there, you have a few of them running simple basic rules. You know how the battles resulted, so they just have to be the NPCs that run in and fight Julius Caesar. I can see both of you know where I'm going there.
I actually don't. I was distracted. Can I give an example of broad rule AI stuff?
Mm-hmm.
In Elder Scrolls Oblivion, you could get, if you finish the Dark Brotherhood questline, you could get these poison apples that make it somewhat easy to assassinate people.
Right.
And reverse pickpocketing is still like a challenge, unless you train pickpocketing, which the only way to do that is to get in trouble a lot for stealing from people, so I never did that. What you can do instead is you can go into someone's house when they're out, because people, like, everyone in the game has, all the NPCs have, like, schedules. They go out and wander the town from, like, 6 to 5 or something, right?
Go and
So-
plow the fields or whatever.
Yeah, exactly, yeah. So that when they're out doing their thing, you sneak into their house, and you can just steal all their food and put a poison apple, like, on the table and then leave. And when they get back, they all, whatever that NPC's schedule is, like, I eat at 8:30, so it looks around the house, finds a thing tagged food, and picks up, eats it, and dies,
Yeah.
which is a hilarious way to kill somebody in this game. Again, that's the, like, low-level NPC, like, I'm following super, super basic rules, because a regular person would walk in and be like, my house has been ransacked, and there's a shiny apple on the table. I'm not that hungry. I'm gonna figure out what's going on here, right?
This looks slightly suspicious.
All right, so I still don't actually know where we're going. I'm excited. You've got
Okay.
me on the edge of my seat.
All right. Well, the thing is, those people who are only kind of barely simulated in the background wouldn't be conscious. This is, on the one hand, possibly a good thing. It might mean that people that are suffering terribly on the other side of the world don't actually exist. They're just being, numbers in the database so that we all get the impression that they're there, but the suffering's not really there. So that's a relief.
Oh, now I see where we're going.
Uh-huh.
I think.
But
Okay.
the other thing is that I at least feel like I exist. I am conscious. I don't know about any of my listeners. Maybe y'all be some crazy simulated zombies or whatever. But for anyone who also feels like they have conscious existence, and if there's a good chance that you're being simulated, you got to ask yourself, why am I being simulated to this high level of fidelity? What is going to happen in my life that the far future descendants are going to be interested in doing this? And so the question comes down to, so are you going to be doing something momentous later in your life? And are you going to be a good guy like Jesus or a bad guy like Hitler?
and they wanted to just see what would happen. Let's plug Eneasz in, but let's give him slightly different starting parameters and press play
Maybe
and see
even
what
the
weird
same.
shit happens.
Honestly, maybe even the same starting parameters. They just like, if you wanted to see how William Shakespeare wrote his plays, you would just kind of do everything you can to get it as, good as possible. Get him up through teenagehood, maybe early childhood, depending on how soon you think you got to start the simulation, and then run it and see. And you're like, oh look, right now he's writing Hamlet. That's awesome. That's what he was thinking while he was writing Hamlet. So
He takes a lot of masturbation breaks. That's so weird. So I don't want to pull the rug out from under this before it gets going, but like, oh, I had something for this. Oh, okay, wait, I got it. So this is the crux of it is that this is a constraint on the simulation hypothesis that like, in fact, it might be easier to simulate more universes with less computing power with less sentient people.
yeah,
So this is like just an epicycle within the simulated universes thing.
right.
There'll be the ones with fully sentient everybody will be a smaller number than the ones with just a handful of selected people. And because we know we're conscious, presumably,
Mm-hmm.
each of us individually, I mean, we have to think, okay, why are they simulating me and not somebody else?
Right.
Okay.
And, the older I get, where I haven't done anything momentous yet, the more I'm thinking maybe this is the root universe, because I have less time to do things. But on the other hand, maybe there's going to be something really crazy and out of my control happening later, because a lot of people do much more momentous things later in their life. I don't know. The whole thing is kind of scary. It makes you paranoid. It also, like, I know in my family the delusions of grandeur thing kind of runs. We've all talked about it, like, with my brothers. But this is definitely a delusions of grandeur kind of thing that, like, oh, I am destined to do something awesome. Why else would they be simulating me if I wasn't destined to do something amazing? But also, you start to worry if you already have like kind of imposter syndrome issues, and every now and then, I'm just going to take my coworker as an example. I got a new coworker several months ago. He like comes by my cube every day to chat for a while. And sure, he could just be a chatty guy, but every now and then I'm like, why is he interested in me? What the hell is going on here? And then I think, maybe he's a person from the far future, kind of like hijacking a body for a little bit to get to talk with me, and then he can go back and tell his friends, dude, I got to talk to Eneasz Brodsky.
Like they all take turns jacking into this guy's
Maybe.
matrix suit.
You don't know. Anytime anyone in the world like notices me and pays attention to me for any reason, I'm like, why are you doing that? And it makes more sense when it's someone who listens to the podcast, but when it's just someone randomly that I've met at a bar or at the store or something, it's like I said, a revelation of my neuroses.
There's a reason we're here hanging out with you, and it wasn't because.
Is there?
So, I mean, if we go too far down that, we'll never come out. But on some level, you're engaging enough to attract people at a distance, right?
Okay.
So like there were a time when we didn't know each other, right? And so like we were able to like kind of bridge that because I was like, oh, you're cool. I want to get to know you better. If you were less cool, I wouldn't have wanted to pursue that, right?
Yeah.
So like this guy's doing that. I'm assuming, right? Your coworker thinks you're interesting, and enough so to want to talk to you for a few minutes a day. Or
I hope
it
so.
could be something else equally mundane where they're just like, oh, if I'm standing over here talking to a coworker, it could give me the impression, could give a bystander the impression of working, and I'm getting paid to do whatever, right?
Right.
The other thing I was thinking of earlier was that there's no sense really in like coming back to now to like if you're simulating, like this isn't like Shakespeare writing plays time period, right?
Well, this is the time period of populist uprising in America.
Right, but if they're going, not to say you're not a person who's going to achieve grand things, but your life is already documented in such a way that we can accurately portray almost all of that in 100 years, barring some disaster of technology, right?
Maybe.
Like you blog, you record a podcast, like a lot of your thinking is already public enough that it wouldn't be worth probably simulating a whole universe just to see what you get up to in your off hours.
I don't know, man. Like Trump, he's got a lot of his life on record too, but I could totally see someone, even if it was available 100 years from now, going back and resimming his life. Like, what the hell created this person?
I think that's all.
At the forefront of this crazy moment in U.S. history.
Well, it's more. That's almost like evidence against the like simulating a conscious person, with like that doesn't follow super generic AI rules.
Right.
It's like the rest of us do.
What would be evidence against it?
Donald Trump
Oh, it just
as a
existing
person
in general.
like because like his reaction to things is the kind of thing that like anybody who like follows him on Twitter can guess 99% of the time, and it's just like, oh, what looks good for me? Oh, what can I put my name on? What can I plate in gold?
Yeah, but is that really his thought process, or is that his public persona, which he's gotten really good at playing?
I just feel like if
How could you know, aside from stimulating him?
I was approaching the question from a different direction. Like that, that's the kind of person I could simulate with simple rules, right?
Okay.
Like if I dedicated the next year of my life to learning how to build video game AIs, I could build a character who just did that, right? But it would be harder to do that for somebody who's like more complicated.
Right.
I think it would be hard for anyone. If you're simulating Julius Caesar, where are you getting the scan of his neurons? I don't think we have a cast of his brain, or do we have his DNA? Like,
No, I don't think so.
and
Just stories about him.
brains still are kind of what is that word that everyone likes to use?
Confusing, complex,
Um,
squishy, pink,
no.
squishy.
Hold on.
I'm frustrated. It's the one that means that something that grows kind of chaotically.
Oh,
Emergent?
Emergent.
Okay.
Yeah, that's like the new code word for here's a process we don't understand.
Right.
A lot of people use that for AI.
Yeah.
But to some extent, I mean, you have your genes that build you, and then you also have your experiences in the womb and your early life experiences. So how much of that could we even realistically simulate? I think that you could simulate a universe, but like I don't think that you could re-simulate a universe in high fidelity.
I also think too we already kind of do this with stories,
Yeah.
and whether historical fiction or like complete fantasies, right?
Yeah.
So like I've never written a book, and I don't you've written book length books,
At least one. Yeah.
right? So in your writing process, when like Joa is 3/4 of the way through the book, and you're like trying to think of the next thing to do you ever ask yourself, what would Joa do in the situation? Or are you kind of driving the like every step?
It's sort of a mix where you can't like make a character do something that just is not true to their character. The whole story goes wrong. It feels fake if you're just having people do things to advance the storyline, right?
If you do that for every step, right?
Well, if you do that for any step, really. But, I mean, there's a few things that happen to them to get the story started or to complicate things. But ultimately, if I want a character to do something, I don't just, like, have them do it, because then you get, like, on YouTube videos mocking your terrible movie writing skills or whatever. And rightly so. It's shitty writing. It takes people out of the story. But since you control the entire world, you just manipulate the events around them to put them into a situation where they would do the thing that you want them to do.
Yeah, and speaking as someone who also writes, I have been surprised by some of my characters' actions. Like, they do run away from you sometimes. They kind of develop their own personalities.
That's more what I imagined it kind of being like. I mean, you're right. Like, it can't just be, kind of autocomplete for this character. But I wonder if in the writing process anyone was ever like, I don't know. I'm trying to think. I mean, all of my examples will be specific because it's only things that I've read. But like, the Wheel of Time is this gigantic, like, encompassing universe. It could have been a small story, could have been contained to one small thing. It takes like a continent. There's different groups of demographics and traditions and all that stuff. And then like all the characters, many of them are really strongly written. And I wonder if there's ever a point where Jordan was writing this and he was just like, man, I wonder, how am I going to complete this? And it's like, oh, you know what? That's totally something Perrin would do. I'm going to have him do that. And like just thinking of like, no, that's very much what he would do.
I'm pretty sure that that's how Wildbow writes.
That's got to be how Wildbow writes.
I mean, he said that he designs these characters and then he designs a scenario and then he just lets it play out.
I mean, in general, any good character writer is going to do that. You create a character, and then they do things according to who they are, right?
Yeah. And so that all sounds like a tangent, but the reason I brought that up is because that sounds like a lot easier than trying to simulate a universe where you're making up Julius Caesar from scratch anyway, right? Mm-hmm. So you read everything you can about Caesar in real life, and then,
just make the closest approximation to Caesar.
Yeah, and we do that now with books, right? So I'm assuming there's historical fiction from the point of view of Julius Caesar floating around out there.
Yes,
lots. Yeah. So he was a popular dude, right?
Yeah.
So like it's not going to get any more higher fidelity than current authors' imaginations, right?
I don't know. Maybe it could be. I have no idea.
Like, we would need some, like, into the past viewing tech. But I guess the difference is that what we can't do with an author writing this is, like you said, describe what a battle looks like IRL, because they didn't see them either, right?
Yeah.
So
Did I ever tell you about Steve Fever? It was a very interesting short story, which, oh God, was it Charles Stross that wrote it? It sounds like a Stross kind of story. But
Steve Fever?
Fever. Like a
Gotcha.
fever that you get, and it's named after Steve. So
I found myself catching that once in a while. Wait, I don't know if I do yet or not. Let me hear the story.
okay, so Steve is basically Steve Jobs stand-in.
Okay.
And he created, like, cutting edge tech guy. He made these nanites, and he was signed up for cryonics, and he had in his company's basic AI software the root directive of, hey, if I ever die, do everything in your power to bring me back. Unfortunately, he dies in a fiery car accident, and his brain is burnt to a crisp, and there's nothing that can be cryopreserved. But that doesn't stop the nanites. They have a record of his, of his life, basically. He blogged a lot of his stuff was recorded. There's lots of interviews of him out there where he retells what things that happened in his childhood, right? So the story takes place the protagonist is this kid on a farm who at one point is possessed by the nanites and runs off to a facility where a bunch of other people who've been possessed by nanites all come together, and they basically run the best approximation they have of either his brain or one of Steve's friends on his body, and they put him in a scenario that Steve once told about his childhood, right? It was something about like riding bikes down a hill to get to a store. Really short thing, but ultimately this fails. The reactions of their virtual Steve are not the same as the reactions recorded in Steve's history. So the nanites are like, okay, got to keep working on our brain algorithm. They let everybody free, and they tinker with their things some more. And that's basically the name of the Steve Fever. Everyone on planet Earth knows that they basically can't do anything about this. Every now and then, young men or men of various ages, Steve Jobs' age, run off, replay out these simulations, and if it doesn't work, the nanites keep trying until they get a brain simulation that perfectly recapitulates every single thing that Steve Jobs did in his life perfectly, and then they'll be like, "Mwaha! This is the perfect Steve brain. Now we put it in a body, and he's back."
So, wait, they're hijacking people who already exist in this world and making them behave like Steve?
Yeah, they're hijacking them and then loading Steve's neurology into their brains, because apparently this is like before whatever. You still need human brains to run the software.
Huh.
Yeah.
And this is a short story?
Yeah.
I want to read this. This sounds fun.
It's really cool.
Yeah, that sounds fantastic. And the premise sounds, I loved every second of it. That was really cool. That's also, I think, how Ray Kurzweil talks about wanting to, in a manner, resurrect his dad.
Mm-hmm.
Wait, he wants to do that way?
Because there's no, well, excuse me, not necessarily the body jackings, but building a model of him based on his written work.
Okay.
and his presumably how people remember him or something, right?
Yeah, I think Neuromancer had what was it called? Dixie's Flatline, which was kind of the recorded personality of the main character's friend.
Cool.
So
it's been
it was
a long time since I read that. I don't
Yeah.
remember much.
That's the main thing that's like one of the main things that stuck with me from that story is kind of like carrying around a ghost in your pocket, because like he's talking to Dixie and he responds the way he would have in life, but like everyone knows that this isn't really him. It's just like an echo.
Yeah.
It's like a living diary or something. That's super creepy and kind of cool.
And that's another thing. If like I'm conscious right now, but I'm almost 40, haven't done anything super noteworthy with my life yet, am I one of the failed versions of Eneasz that's going to be terminated when I don't like take over the world at 50 or whatever the hell it is Eneasz Prime did?
I mean, it's also, I guess it's not clear why you'd have to be conscious to do this, but like the works that you've done, like actually we got somebody who commented on the, I think via Patreon, and we'll mention that later if we want at more length, but he mentioned that like he got out of Mormonism listening to this podcast, right?
Oh yeah.
So maybe
yeah.
he takes over the world.
Yeah.
And so, although there's no reason for us to have been sentient to like produce this content or us to even be real, right?
Right.
So like that's not quite the case, but I guess it's not clear to me, like we don't have to be the,
like I said, it's a half-baked idea that's more about my own mental issues than about things. So we should probably preface this episode with a memetic hazard warning. Like, if you're prone to delusions of grandeur, you probably shouldn't listen to this.
Or solipsism.
Or solipsism, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know why. Like, I guess I've had some vague diagnosis of, what do you call it, depersonalization disorder, where it's like you kind of feel like you're like watching TV instead of like being alive.
Yeah.
I mean, I had
disassociation, right?
There's dissociative identity. There's
That's different.
Depersonalization, derealization.
I think it was depersonalization or derealization. It wasn't as severe as dissociative identity disorder, but like, I mean, this is just the sort of thing where like a lot of the times things don't feel real, and I think that like everybody's used to this when you're really tired. Like, maybe I'm assuming. I guess I've only ever been the one person. But
no,
like,
I mean, I've
could get it, I guess.
I've had this before. I don't know if I was really tired at the time though.
And or depressed is another big part of it. But like, I think certainly I notice a lot when I'm tired. Like, I'll go down and like, oh, I forgot to like lock the deadbolt or something, so I'll go down and do that, and like none of that like feels like it's actually happening. Or like even like getting out to my car to go to work first thing in the morning, like I'm not quite awake yet.
Yeah.
So like that kind of thing. Why did I bring that up? So like I already have occasional periods where like things don't feel real, and yet I've never been troubled with solipsism or with simulation concerns. Like, I guess that all strikes me as so improbable. Like, it makes much more sense to me just to take the kind of like naive realist point of view that like, yeah, all the stuff out there is the stuff that's actually out there, and I'm perceiving it with my eyes that are translating that information to my brain, and like, so is everybody else. Like, to me, the idea that other people aren't, and I get like that's the point of the simulation hypothesis, but to me the idea that other people aren't also conscious and aren't experiencing things the way that I am because like they came from the same roots that I did, that strikes me as like an extra layer of complexity. But the point of the simulation is that you're starting with different priors. Well, so,
and strictly speaking, yes, it's absolutely an extra layer of complexity. I think it's just one of those things that some brains throw errors out, and my brain is one of those brains. It's not quite functioning exactly right. Enough to function, but
Are not exactly right things are what make us interesting. And I think everybody has those, right? And as long as people are managing okay, then like,
Maybe that's why we're all being simulated, to test our weird brain malfunctions.
That strikes me as distinctly plausible. Like, everybody in the future is like, we were talking right before we got on about like, oh yeah, in the distant transhumanist future where everything's all nice and pain-free, people are going to be, trying to explain like what physical pain felt like or something.
I have a fun story recommendation for that, but I want you to finish your thought first.
Oh, you bet. It's just the last part of it is like they'll also all be like perfectly mentally adjusted. So
Right.
like, I wonder what'll happen if like we made people just like sad for no reason, or if we made people like sad and then crazy happy and then really sad again, or like they can't sleep or they need lots of sleep or like random shit like that. So that could be like, all right, let's run a simulation where we just like roll a 50-sided die and hit everybody with at least one of these things and just see how the world goes.
Oh boy. Yeah, I really want to recommend a short story by Scott Westerfeld called Stupid Perfect World.
Okay.
This is in the transhumanist utopian future. Everybody is living in this post-scarcity world where there's really high technology, and as part of a school project, kids have to take a scarcity class, and they have to choose one ailment to have inflicted upon themselves for a week and then do a report on it. And so the main character decides that he's going to sleep because people are kind of just like, I think they just recharge. Nobody needs to sleep. Another character decides that she wants to have hormones. Everyone has hormone balancers. She's like, I want to experience real puberty, and it's just a
nightmare.
Yeah, it's really funny.
That sounds like it'd be a great, man. Could you imagine if we weren't all super like, I think having everyone being exactly of like the same perfect level of mental cloth all the time would be super boring. Like you said, dumb perfect future or whatever it was called.
Stupid perfect world.
Stupid perfect world.
It sounded fun to me. I mean,
well, I think no. The premise of being able to pick something wrong sounds outstanding. That's the part I was going to get at. The idea of like, oh yeah, no, I don't get stressed because I don't have enough. I never get enough cortisol, or I never have a shortage, whatever causes stress, right? Like, no, I'm always happy and relaxed. Like, I think having thrills and scares and excitements to the point sometimes where it's even like above and beyond of like, I'm not sure what a healthy range of experience is, but like,
to the point where it's not going to give you PTSD.
Yeah, or like to the point where you're like literally like squeeing with joy, right? But so I feel like having those range of experiences is super valuable. But how cool would the world be if that was a requirement that we could do that, hopefully wouldn't damage, you did it in a way that wouldn't permanently damage people. But it's like, hey, why don't you try a week, with bipolar disorder, or try a week as a black woman, try a week as a person in a wheelchair. Just I think about wheelchair stuff a lot because the sidewalks near my place aren't great, and I could get over them. I've sat in wheelchairs before. My grandma, we made her a ramp when she broke her leg, I don't know, 10 years ago, and she's out of the wheelchair now, but she was in it for, I don't know, half a year, and it was pretty amazing. The ramp had to be really long for her to be able to get up her stairs, and it's like 3 steps under her own power. Granted, she was in her mid 70s, so like it would take a lot of power, or she didn't have a lot of power to put into it anyway. But you would think, oh, okay, yeah, you just put a board on it and they can wheel themselves up. That is like kind of like the naive thought. It's like, no, it's got to be crazy long ramp to be able to push a chair up without it sliding back, or with you being able to do it with weakish arms.
Yeah, there's a lot of stuff that is involved with accessibility that I guess abled people don't really think about.
Exactly. So I mean, how eye-opening would it be to be in a wheelchair for a week, where you have the option of getting out, right?
Yeah, I mean, I think you could do that now. Like, you could just be in a wheelchair for a week. You could not give yourself bipolar for a week, probably.
Yeah.
At least not in a way that would be safe and reversible.
Right. I mean, so you could sit in a wheelchair, but I think and that would be eye-opening, and maybe they're cost prohibitive and stuff for everyone to go through the experiment. But just, you couldn't, like, say, you couldn't easily change your skin color for a week in a way that people wouldn't notice or whatever, right?
Or, accuse you of blackfacing.
Exactly.
I wonder if that would be, would it be okay to blackface if you were doing it to better understand the experience of living as a black person? Probably not.
I'll settle this. Yes.
Yeah, I don't. I mean, blackface is a specific thing where it was at least a specific thing where people would get up in blackface in order to mock black people. To look at how dumb and primitive these people are. They're so funny, haha.
But now you can't do it because that is what that reminds people of.
Right.
Even if you cosplay a character with dark skin and you paint your skin to be that character, that's considered a huge no-no because it is reminiscent of blackface that was done to mock black people.
I think it's considered a huge no-no by dumb people who I don't care about their opinion on this subject about.
Right.
But I get where they're coming from, but I guess ask somebody who would be affected by this, and if the answer is literally nobody, or the people who do care don't care, then it's up to them, right?
The people I know have wildly different opinions, ranging from lol, I don't care, to that would be the worst thing ever.
I thought
slap
about
that person in the face.
This is completely tangential, but that's where we're at right now. I remember, I think Indian headdresses or something, American Indian headdresses, where it's a dick move to wear one of those around, and or
I think they have some kind of the ones that you see worn most often have some kind of specific significance,
right,
to a Indian tribe. I can't remember the details, but
and so I was talking with somebody once, and it's let's pretend, for example, it was, say, a headdress, and 98% of American Indians were fine with it. They're we don't care, do whatever you want, as long as you're not being a dick or mocking us or whatever. But if you think, or if you're wearing a style of fashion for your wedding that's untraditional or something, or not your tradition, whatever, because you're too white to wear a sari or something, right?
Right.
If nobody cares except for one blogger, are you obligated to change your behavior because one person doesn't care? Or is it enough that 99% of people don't care?
I personally think it doesn't really matter. If you're using it to belittle or mock people, that's not that's an asshole thing to do, and you shouldn't do that.
You shouldn't do that for anything. Right. Whether you're wearing an Indian headdress or something, or
I'm willing to say that on the Indian headdress thing, just due to America's history of murdering and subjugating all the Native Americans, that we should give them. We should be okay, our bad, we won't wear a headdress because of these horrible things we've done,
But your family got here 30 years ago.
Yeah, I know.
So, you didn't do shit to...
No, I know, but
I
am living in this culture. The fact that they were shit on so much, it's all right, fine. No headdress, Now,
but what if they all said it was okay except for one of them? And I realize this is totally not a point...
Well, then fuck that one guy.
But so what's the critical mass of people where you can't say fuck them?
I don't know.
4, 4%.
Like, they look pretty, and as a fashion statement in general, I think it should be okay, and certainly for anyone outside of the U.S., it's probably fine, but for Americans specifically, because of their history, I think it's okay for Native American people to be like, no, don't do that.
And to be clear,
not just okay, but like that American people should respect that.
And to be clear, that's my position is like, don't, if someone's, offended by what you're doing, seriously reconsider about what you're doing. And like,
Yeah, or at least ask, does this offend you?
right.
Some people do have good reasons, and some of them I think are ridiculous.
Yeah, I don't have a lot of patience with people who are offended on behalf of other people.
Right.
Like, if you're a white person wearing a kimono in Japan, despite the fact that they have shops open to rent these to tourists, you can find somebody when you share pictures on Facebook like, "I can't believe you're doing that, meh." And it's like, that's their livelihood. The business owner there decided that they wanted to sell this to me and make money off of it. Are you calling them like too stupid? Like, are you saying that you're more enlightened about the subjugation of their culture than they are?
I remember this article where a Japanese shopkeeper read about social justice warriors telling white people that they weren't allowed to wear kimono, and she didn't understand the social justice mindset and assumed that they must have just been anti-Japanese racists. Because why else would they be saying that white people can't wear kimono?
Yeah, I think
She's
that's
like, well, I want everyone to wear my kimono. I think they're great.
I mean,
That's why I'm selling them.
It is very much a cultural segregationist mindset to say that people cannot borrow from other cultures.
especially if they're saying, "Please let me sell you this." Right.
Yeah, there's a lot of, I don't know, like a lot of cultural appropriation bothers me because it does prohibit sharing ideas between cultures, sharing art, music, culture, and then also, yeah, like there's Native Americans who sell handicraft goods.
Yeah,
And
dream catchers, etc. Like, yeah, so like people sell those, and some of them probably come from from authentic American Indians, right?
I think there's so much scaremongering about like, don't buy things that belong to this culture, but it's like, what if you're buying handicrafts made by a person of that culture with the intent of selling them for their livelihood?
Well, then you're a racist.
Yeah,
It's just complicated.
you get too deep, especially into, like you said, the social justice. What was the word you used? Cultural appropriation thing, where like the rhetoric sounds almost exactly like white supremacists. It's like, no, we got to keep them separated. You can't borrow from them. It's wrong.
Yeah.
Sure, it's wrong for different reasons, but it's weird. Anyway, before we rip ourselves out of this complete tangent, I do think that like if someone's feelings are hurt, take it very seriously, and especially if they're hurt for themselves, not for other people. And I don't know why I was anchored. I was thinking of the headdresses, but speaking of American Indians, I do think it's complete fuckery that there are like 2 football teams.
Oh my God.
And there are protesters from American Indian tribes outside of every game saying,
especially
"Hey,
since
you know
one
what?
of them is a racist term.
Well,
oh my God.
Yeah, redskin and well, it's racist, but it's like the other mascots are animals. Like
Not all of them.
Most of them.
Honestly.
Eagles,
Jaguars,
Broncos. I
Chiefs.
can only name like 5. Oh wait, Patriots isn't an animal.
Giants aren't an animal.
All right, but the theme, right, is like,
I think the theme are things that your opponent would be scared of, or things that project power.
so the second one sounds flattering. The first one is kind of derivative of of conveying power. But anyway, so there's a heavy animal theme, I guess. Whether or not it's even
No one calls themselves the woodchucks.
at least not professional. sports
Right.
teams, yeah.
Jokingly, maybe, but yeah.
Yeah. But anyway, so yeah,
God.
I don't think that I can't imagine being on the Redskins in a football team.
Oh, God,
that's
no.
just weird. Like, imagine just, I don't know, like, what's the equivalent being on like I'm trying to think of other racial slurs, but I'm realizing I probably shouldn't have
No.
to. So yeah, all right.
Also, wow. All I wanted to do was talk about if people are Jesus or Hitler in the simulation universe, and now we get into the culture wars. Why is it always the culture wars, man?
They're
Well,
just fun to talk about.
They're fun to talk about, and I can't remember.
They always fucking.
I'm
give
sure
me heart
maybe there's some version
blood pressure.
if we played this back about how it made sense that we got here. But
Um,
to get back to climb back out of this, like, certainly, I guess if you're solipsistic and you think that, oh no, I'm the only conscious mind, whether or not they're all simulations or they're all like just tricks of the devil or tricks of the robots or aliens or whatever.
No, there might be thousands of conscious minds.
Sure, but they, you wouldn't be able to identify them, right?
Right.
So, like
And they're most likely to be the people that you interact with often.
yeah, probably. Yeah, and I liked your idea, your thought of like the tourist coming in to visit a young Inyash. I think that's That's a fun way to think about it.
I think this was sparked because Robin Hanson once, a long time ago, said, what if we take the simulation idea seriously? And he also proposed that you'd probably only simulate people that were historically significant in some way. So in that case, if you want to maximize the amount of time that you are simulated, you should try to hang out with very important people as much as you can. Like, if you know the president is going to be in your town, go to his rallies and stuff, you know? Those are the times where you will be simulated in the highest fidelity.
Well, I don't know. Simulating crowds in like NASCAR games and stuff. I never play them, but I see the trailers. Like, they're not doing much.
No.
They're paint. Yeah. So like I think you should. I mean,
I think that was his advice. Be close to people who make history.
Or better yet, make history. And so I think what you should do, if you're you know what? What I think you absolutely shouldn't do is like
take any of this seriously.
Take any of this seriously, but for the sake of argument, you'd make more simulations if you successfully pulled off like a Unabomber style catastrophe, right?
I think the future should have a very strict no simulating abhorrent people policy.
So therefore, none of us are Hitler, right?
I suppose so.
Yeah.
Good point. Yeah, I guess they'd never simulate Hitler. They'd never simulate like school shooters and shit.
Why are you saying that they should have that rule?
Because otherwise, it is an encouragement to do those things.
Come again?
If you want to be simulated, and they're going to simulate interesting people,
okay.
Make yourself interesting by killing lots of people or doing lots of crazy, terrible shit, right? Like Jeffrey Dahmer's mind is probably fascinating from like a purely abstract, like I want to know what's going on in this person's head kind of thing way.
But we should never ever simulate it.
I think this is the same as we shouldn't publicize school shooters or like serial killers, but that never works because the media wants to sensationalize this person.
The most recent two, they've done a very good job of not saying any names and just calling them the shooter.
And
the one that happened yesterday and the one that was a few months ago, like, it was amazing when I was listening to the various newscasts about it. Like, everyone was on board. They were not named at all. I didn't even know the gender of this person.
Oh, glad to know.
Yeah.
I didn't even hear about the one. You're talking about the one in California?
Yeah. That happened yesterday, right?
Or the day before.
Or the day before.
I can't remember. But I didn't even hear about it. So the fact maybe that they didn't talk about this person enough also kept it off my desk. But I guess I wasn't really on Reddit that much this week. So, like, where else am I going to hear about things? Yeah. I think I saw something recently where someone was like, oh, look, we haven't had a school shooting in a while. Things are going pretty good. It's like, It's been summer, dude. Like, we take school off in the summer in the United States. There aren't going to be a lot of people at schools to shoot right now.
All right, shall we move on?
Trying to think if I have anything else. I can't take the simulation thing seriously.
How come?
I don't know. It just seems like I can't prove it. So I can't prove string theory either. So I'm not really like putting any weight into either of those ideas.
The things that you can't prove are the ones that bother me the most.
I mean, I guess they bother me, but I can't prove it. I can't do anything about it. So there's other things I could be using my brain space for.
Yeah.
Is it weird that I care like extremely little about like which fundamental, at least right now, like which fundamental theory of physics turns out to be true?
Not really. It wouldn't impact your life in any way.
Neither would simulation theory then, right? Like, I guess you can take it both ways, right? Like either you're not in a simulation, in which case you should be nice to people and live a good life because like, live healthfully and happily because that makes like you healthy and happy and you can help the other people around you flourish and that makes like the universe a better place. Or the universe is just you, in which case, like, who knows what the rules are, but being a good person, like,
still
in
makes your life
BioShock,
better.
if you don't harvest the little sisters, you get the happy ending, right? So you maybe want to do that. Go for the happy ending, even if you think this is a simulation.
That's actually a good segue into user feedback. If we want to, do we want to go there? Do we want to do sequences next?
I would love to go to user feedback, unless you guys want to start with the sequences.
No, let's do it.
All right.
Well, really quick, I was just going to say, while we're all pulling our notes out for feedback, there hasn't been anything in Steven's video game corner in a while because I haven't been playing anything lately.
What?
I've been playing Hand of Fate 2 on the Switch, which is like I think I talked about it very briefly before. It's all right. It's just a little game. It's not fun. I haven't been playing anything since Red Dead Redemption 2, really. Like as far. Oh wait, no, I played Sekiro.
Okay.
Sekiro?
Yeah, that was the new game from Software where like it's way faster. And depending on your flavor, better combat. But it's the people who made Dark Souls, but they made a new game that's
cool.
Not Dark Soulsy.
I've been playing Beat Saber.
Oh, really?
That looks awesome.
Yeah, one of my friends has it. It is really fun.
God, I want to play that.
That sounds awesome.
Raymond Arnold posted, should I wear wrist weights while playing Beat Saber to like maximize my exercise, and then there was a whole thread about wearing weighted vests and the fact that like you want to avoid getting tennis elbow. It's just like really happy that like threads like that exist.
It's funny because my immediate answer to that would have been like, no, because a lightsaber doesn't weigh that much, and why else are you playing Beat Saber unless you're practicing your lightsaber skills?
Awesome.
All right. Yeah, so we can just segue right into Graham Morrow's email. Graham says, in your latest episode, while discussing the third alternatives to afterlifeism, Jess brought up that even if we believe in afterlives, we don't all ourselves, I think they mean off ourselves, because heaven is so great. I think it's worth pointing out that while most modern afterlifeists indeed don't do this, early Christianity had a big enough problem with martyrdom cults, trying to sidestep the Old Testament suicide prohibition, and fast-track themselves to heaven, that it became a serious problem, and in the decades following Tertullian's praise for such a cult whose members submitted to execution en masse, Christian authorities had to establish a norm that voluntary martyrdom counted as suicide, and would exclude you from heaven. To channel Orwell, modern Christians don't appear to believe in the existence of an afterlife as strongly as they believe in the existence of Australia. But it's worth remembering that there was a time when many did. And that's, like, upsetting, actually.
Oh, that's upsetting?
Is it not upsetting? The idea that, you know, there's a religious cult that says, hey, there's, you know, if you die and you're a good Christian and you do these things, you're going to go to this magic place, and then people are just killing themselves.
Well, okay, I mean,
to get there.
Yes, that's upsetting. I personally thought it was awesome that there's someone in history who actually took their belief seriously, but you know, the whole fact that they were killing themselves for no reason is pretty shitty. Yeah.
Yeah, they had to, I guess, make the whole law that suicide prevents you from getting into heaven in order to circumvent this like exact thing happening. It
seems it's so rare in human anything, history, psychology, whatever. It's just so rare to find humans who actually really believe what they say they believe, that this was kind of inspiring.
I think people pretty often believe what they say that they believe.
Yeah. Maybe it's just that the culture's had enough time to evolve the anti-suicide memetics that people can believe what they believe but not kill themselves.
Was it like the Heaven's Gate people, or which one? What was the Kool-Aid
Heaven's
cult?
Gate. Oh, Kool-Aid cult was the oh god.
Heaven's Gate did the
They were the ones that wore the Nike
telescope.
sneakers. Yeah, and
Yeah.
believed in the UFO thing. They went down. It was in Guyana. Jones.
That was Jonestown.
Yeah, Jonestown. What was the name of the religion though?
It was
it James Jones?
the People's Temple Movement.
Okay.
Sounds religious, but
Jeffrey Jones? It was some guy whose first name also started with a J.
I think it was James Jones.
Jim Jones.
Jim Jones. There we go.
Like, I guess in any case, my understanding is that some people were force-fed the Kool-Aid, but like a lot of them were there like, oh, I'm all over it. Let's do this.
Yeah.
I think like when Jess said that, I think a lot of people like believe, or many people believe what they say they believe. I guess maybe the word believe there is doing too much work, because they certainly say this, right? But I guess what does it like mean to believe? No, that's not the right approach to take to this. I feel like if you really believed in an afterlife, like, and I brought this up before, but like death wouldn't be so traumatic as many people find it to be. And I get like you miss the person, but like I think people feel like, oh no, they're gone forever. But I think I'm belaboring points I made before. What I was gonna say is that I think there's like a confidence level where it's like, sure, I believe it. I'd bet $50, but I wouldn't bet 1,000 to 1 odds, right? Like,
I think people just compartmentalize, probably.
I also think that there's actually a lot of sadness to losing someone. I now have someone that I have basically lost in my life, but they're not dead, but it still really sucks. And I guess I'm going through a whole grieving process or whatever, and I can see how even if you believed in heaven, you still don't have that person in your life anymore, and so there's still a lot of pain.
that's true. I think, and I'm drawing this from one example. This is where like I had this realization when I was like 14, and it was this younger creationist who was a friend of mine's mom, and I think her sister died. I know I've told this before, but she was distraught and distressed over this for months. And like I totally got it, because I didn't think that there was an afterlife. But it's like she was in her 50s, and it's like you're gonna see her in 40 years, and you'll get to spend the next 2 trillion years together. Like I get that you miss them, but they're like not gone. They're just like away, and they're really happy, and they're not dying of whatever killed them, right?
Yeah.
Like, so
40 years is still a long time for someone that you love, that
It-
you have to wait.
it is. But I got the impression that that wasn't the nature of her suffering. Not that like I want to see. It was I want to see her again. It was like she's gone, not like she's over there and I can't talk to her, right? I think it was Methods of Rationality where he says like they would treat the afterlife like, emigrating to Australia in the days of sailing ships, where it's like, yes, you're technically reachable, but it's way too much trouble, but I'll be there eventually, right?
Can't you, like, communicate with people in the afterlife?
It depends on what you believe.
A lot of
Some
people seem to
people
think
think
that, yeah, you can send your prayers to them and they'll answer.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Maybe
I'm
no, that's a
bumming
good
myself
point.
out with this topic.
No, that's actually a good point. Maybe part of what distressed this woman, and maybe I'm not giving her enough credit. I think I have a poor mental model of her because I met her during my, like, at the beginning of my cynical skeptic age.
Yeah.
And she was like an anti-vaxxer, young earthquake, like all the
Oh my
things,
God.
checked all the boxes.
Mhm.
And but now that I think about it, maybe she tried. Maybe she prayed to her sister every night and never heard anything back. And maybe that was part of what made it so distressing, When I put it that way, it much more humanizes her, which
Mhm.
actually is relevant to the Less Wrong post that we're not to yet. So, but yeah. Anyway, religion's weird, man. And sometimes people believe it all the way to the end of the bullet, so.
To brighten up the mood, can I read, like, a couple of sentences from the Wikipedia drinking the Kool-Aid article?
Oh my God.
Yeah.
Let's lighten this mood up.
I just happened to see this. As a point of fact regarding the phrase itself, it is not known with certainty which of two grape powdered flavor mixes, Flavor Aid, Kool-Aid, or both, were used to concoct the poison in Jonestown. The commune had both among their supplies. Most sources surmise that Flavor Aid was the primary flavor ingredient used, and there are two links. Shortly after the tragedy, manufacturers of both products addressed the matter by pointing out whether their company's particular drink mix was or was not used was irrelevant. A cyanide-laced poison had been created and used to kill people, and their or either respective product was misused as the vehicle to do so.
That's like when Tiki had to come out with like we didn't know they were going to do that with our Tiki torches thing after that Nazi rally.
That was actually surprisingly entertaining for something relating to mass suicide.
I've got a quick feedback which I alluded to before, but
Sure.
and I don't know how to attribute this because in your email here or in your it's a private message on Patreon, so which actually related to a couple of emails from 2017, which I hope we replied to. And if we didn't, we suck. I'm really sorry. You could say we can repeat this, but you didn't say anything about your name, so I'll leave you off the air just in case. But we had somebody write in, and basically the summed up version, this is from the Patreon message, quote, "The summed up version is that your work helped me escape Mormonism, so you rock." The updated version is that my wife also escaped, and now we have a second child. I also graduated with my BS in CS and got a job at Google. So this is Rationalist winning.
That's awesome.
And I think that's fantastic.
Yeah.
And
I think I remember that email. It was sent to the HP More podcast email, if I recall correctly, the first one in 2017.
maybe. I can't get any of these links open on my phone, so I can't confirm. But
Okay.
the
And yeah, I remember that, like, it was a very heartwarming email to receive. I thank you for sharing that.
yeah, and
Yeah, that's so cool.
it is, and it's weird. Like I had a conversation with somebody who actually, fuck it, he's been on the show. Zeke, he's the guy who got me into programming, got me out of my last job, and like now I'm on this career path that I really enjoy. My life trajectory is completely altered, and he did it from like a 10-minute conversation, and he sent me an email with a link to automate the boring stuff.
Cool.
And I told him that like a year later, and he kind of like looked at me like kind of scared, and he's like, "That's kind of horrifying. I don't mean to have that big of an impact." And it's like, I thought about it, and I think that's just what life is. Like, you don't know what things you're gonna do that are gonna ripple out and change things, right?
Yeah.
Like, I'm a much happier person, and who knows what else I would have found if he hadn't got me into computer science, but like, or into programming, not computer science. I don't want to belittle computer scientists by pretending to be one. But I can't remember how I found the Skeptoid podcast, for example, but I've been listening to that since some of the first few dozen episodes, and so from there I found like Rationally Speaking at some point, found HPMOR because Julia mentioned it in the like what I've been reading lately section that's like a quick throwaway.
Yeah.
And I think I remember distinctly I happened to be at a stoplight or something and was able to put that in my phone because it sounded interesting.
Oh, wow.
And if I hadn't been at a stoplight, or if I had stepped out of the car during that part of the podcast, I would never have found I may have been years later, found the rationalist community, probably wouldn't have connected with you. Like, so the littlest things make a big difference for people. And so I guess I'm doing all of this to minimize the fact, like, of any grandiosity that, like, I feel like I'm doing anything important. So while I'm overjoyed that
You have earned your rightful place in the simulated future.
while I'm overjoyed that our listener had a a positive impact from this.
Yeah.
I think it's just like things that happen, and this is something maybe a thing to take forward. Like, if somebody you do nice things for somebody, maybe that's like the nice thing that turned their day around, and that could turn their whole life around, right? Small side thing. I know we're sidetracked. When I was leaving, I spent my first week of my new job in Detroit, training at the office there, and on the flight back, at the airport, the person shepherding the people like us into the line to go through security was clearly having a really hard time, and I don't know what had stressed her out, but as soon as the group in front of us that she flagged along, she just put her hands in her face and started crying.
Oh shit.
It's like a TSA person?
Yeah. Oh yeah, I'm sorry, the TSA person. And I walked past, because I think I was already a little past her at this point, but there wasn't a crowd behind me. I could have made it back. And I thought about it for the next 5 minutes of I could still go back there and give her a hug. And I didn't, and I felt bad. Or at least offered. Who knows if she'd want some stranger at the airport touching her. Germs are everywhere, and airports are disgusting. But I could have asked, can I give you a hug? But somebody from one of her coworkers came along and did something, and she chipped up. I kept an eye on her. But if who knows, if I'd been less cowardice at that moment, and it helped her, maybe that made her day better or something. But my point is do nice things for people, and try and put stuff out there, put positive things into the universe, and positive things happen. It's about the most
hippie thing you could say.
I was trying to think of who's that crank that's always on Oprah. It's Deepak Chopra.
Yeah.
It's a very Chopra-esque thing to say, but I mean it in a way that I hope everybody followed over my 10-minute fucking ramble.
I think you need more quantums in there to make it Deepak Chopra-esque.
Right, thank you, yes.
You gotta do quantum good things. So who else wants feedback?
Well, I can read one from Economic Model, who I believe is actually our David guest, the anarchist economist David from a few episodes back. Anyways, he says, this is when we had the talk about is rationalism being taken over by the alt-right, or co-opted by the alt-right or whatever. David says, so here's my beef with your suggested solution. If we start arguing with rationalizer Reds, we risk becoming a wing of the blue team, which would be a catastrophic distraction from our core project. We can counteract this effect by equally vociferously arguing against rationalizing blues, anti-nuclear advocates, anti-vaccine advocates, etc. But then we'll basically just be right where we are now, except we'll spend way more time arguing with trolls and morons online instead of doing cool things like aligning AI. Which, first of all, I would like to interject. Some of us enjoy arguing with trolls and morons online, so this is a pastime. But a much better solution, in my opinion, this is him continuing, is just to cut color politics out of the Bayesian rationalist spaces altogether. You're allowed to be a blue or a red or a green or a yellow and be a Bayesian, but you're to check your color at the door as best you can. Policy discussions can be undertaken, but only with great caution and with a grandmaster presiding. They should be as much as possible about facts and not about values. I basically agree. It's really hard not to get caught up in this thing, though. Politics is the mind killer for a reason, right? All the instincts and emotions say, hey, let's talk about how stupid this thing is. And I think, based on our last episode about culture, I actually do think culture is important. I just hate the culture war because it feels to be very zero-sum. Constantly going back and forth and killing everything you love to stay exactly where you are.
I don't think those things are mutually exclusive. Culture can be super important, and the current climate of quote culture wars can be super unproductive and in fact harmful and unhelpful, right? Yeah. So, and as far as leaving politics at the door and stuff, whenever I bring stuff up, I'm always doing it in a self-aware way, and I'm hoping that I'm not I don't know. I feel like if you make it this thing that you can't talk about, then if it's off the table and whatever. I mean, there have been subjects, we had an episode recently about something that was politically climate relevant.
Well, I mean,
I can't
Even the
remember.
UBI episode, I did appreciate the fact that we managed to stick on UBI and not get sidetracked into, is anarchism a decent form of government? Because we could have gone on that for hours as well, but we had a topic and it was nice to stick to it.
Yeah.
Not a thing we do often on this podcast.
Yeah, I think like I guess I don't know. I'm torn because you're right. Politics is a high level subject to talk about as far as like being able to do it with any hopes of being rational about it, right?
Mm-hmm.
And that's why generally when I talk about it, it's mainly flippant comments. And I realize that doesn't exactly like that doesn't absolve me, but it does mean that like I'm not making like this is my case and I've come to it, as an empirical rationalist, and this is my best Bayesian conclusion. I'm mainly just pointing out like, isn't that stupid or isn't that funny, or wouldn't that be cool? So I'm hoping like my lack of pretension is there. Like I'm not. This isn't like, oh no, I'm strongly convicted in this. There are things I'm strongly convicted in, and it's hard not to. Like the like that punching Nazis episode that we did a couple years ago. Like that was topical,
Yeah.
and it was politically related, but it was mainly tied to like is oppressing terrible free speech with violence a cool thing to do or not?
I'm also kind of reminded of Stalin's old quote that you may not be interested in war, but war is interested in you,
Yeah.
Just because you aren't willing to fight, it doesn't mean it isn't going to come for you. Jess, do you have opinions on this?
Just going back to the politics is the mind killer sequence, the idea behind it wasn't never talk about politics, it was don't talk about politics as a beginner rationalist.
Especially not when trying to make points about something not at all related to politics.
And yeah, I think David actually said this, focus on the facts basically. Yeah, you can talk about policy discussions, but make them empirical. And
Yeah.
I'm interested in what he means by only with great caution and with a grand master presiding. I don't think that we have that designation yet. I would love for that to exist. I love the idea from Eliezer's story, Three Worlds Collide. They had like the confessor, what wasn't he called?
Yeah.
There was someone who was a professional rationalist who was supposed to be present in order to point out cognitive biases and distortions and whatnot.
God, that'd be
First
an
of all,
awesome
I want that
world.
to be my job. Secondly, I
would-
want these people to exist.
I would be absolutely awful at that job, but I want someone like that around to
Imagine
help
if
me.
there was one just like at every like business meeting at your company. There's just a dude in a black robe there that's like, that was your I don't know.
Not even business meetings. I would like one of those people
It's
to be
anchoring
around
bias.
every time. Yeah. I'd like one of those people to be around every time I'm like having a conversation with someone that I love, because those are the worst.
Oh yeah.
I think at the very least, Josh, if you're going to say you'd make a terrible confessor, but you want one around, I think that's huge points in your favor anyway.
Okay.
Like, I mean, I think a lot of people would be like, no, I don't want some asshole in my ear telling me like if I'm thinking wrong, right? So to say I would like someone in my ear helping with my thinking is I would like that too. I think.
Well, I know that I often do get sucked into these things. Like I legitimately do enjoy arguing sometimes just for the sake of it, and I get carried away. And I really need someone like that to be around, be like, hey, you're just being dumb right now.
Oh, I wanted to draw a minor contention with you conflated trolls and morons earlier. And they're very different.
Yes, they are.
Yeah, the Very Bad Wizards a couple episodes ago had a great dive into kind of the difference there.
I just heard that one.
Yeah, but they brought up my favorite troll. I guess I don't have a long list of trolls, but I am on the Ken M subreddit, and the whole thing is just doubling down on whatever crazy bullshit comment that he just had. And I won't get into it, but if you're interested, just go to like r/ I think Ken_M. Just the examples. Let me confirm. But he's just a professional troll, and you can tell. And they're also
Not professional in that he gets paid for it, but he's a professional level of troll.
right. And it is just Ken, capital K, capital M, and no underscore.
Okay.
Yeah, like it. The other thing that I really like about it is it's not mean spirited. It's not going in and messing with groups. It's just throwing in like a crazy comment, like or commenting on like I don't know some food sites or some food company's Facebook page and like, oh look, we're making your casserole, and like a picture of it, and like inside the oven is just also a bunch of magazines. And it's like, oh, that's great, Ken, you should probably take those out of there. It's like, no, that's just how grandma used to make them. And it's like, no one's getting hurt from that kind of trolling, right? It's just hilarious.
Yeah.
Anyway, that's
Trolls can be funny.
yes.
Usually my experience with them is that they are not.
Yeah.
Right, yeah. There's the difference between like trolling as a harmless game and trolling to be a dick. So
I'd like to follow up with a comment on the same topic.
Yeah, this was a good one.
So, Architect of Ages notes, it's interesting to note the philosophical history of this phenomenon. And by this phenomenon, let me back up. We're still talking about the whole alt-right rationalism. Are they commingling too much or whatever? Architect of Ages says, in short, the continental analytic divide after the continental/analytic divide after the Enlightenment produced competing worldviews. One in which the scientific/analytic approach was the last word with respect to what counted as truth, e.g., scientism, skeptic-ish movements, etc., and one which continued the Enlightenment's program of deconstruction of such grand narratives, e.g., postmodernism, critical theory. The upshot of all this is that two relatively isolated philosophical traditions are dictating rhetorical bedfellows in the present day. Shapiro, atheists, and rationalists can be seen as descendants of the analytic tradition, asserting that if it can't be resolved by experiment or analysis, it's either bullshit or not even worth debating. Feminist and social justice movements can be seen as descendants of the continental tradition, asserting that science and logic are great and all, but they're always interpreted through a cultural or contextual lens, so there's no such thing as purely objective interpretation of findings. TLDR, echoes of a post-Enlightenment split in philosophy are why the alt-right, atheists, rationalists, etc. use similar rhetorical techniques. It's not really co-opting so much as parallel evolution.
That's a fun spin on it.
That is kind of awesome.
I wonder if people in those camps would agree with that.
Well, I'm in one of those camps. I'm happy to agree with it. But I don't really know that much about the history of the two thinking movements.
Yeah, I've heard things like continental philosophy thrown around and stuff, and the level of philosophy that I studied was always more just like specific ideas. I'm sure those came up and like, oh yeah, the continental peoples thought this and whatever. So I don't have anything to weigh in there, I guess, is other than like, yep, those are big movements and cultures within the history of those fields, but not anything that I know anything about.
I know a little bit about postmodernism, and what I do know pretty much lines up with the idea that the facts don't really matter. It's what how people on the ground interpret it, and it's all about like the cultural context, which you hear a lot from, you know, those other sides that we, God damn it.
You can just say Jordan Peterson. I don't think he'd mind.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, so that's his thing. I'm sure his thing would take 40 hours to explain, but like there are people who would say, yeah, no, that's fine. Truth is culturally lensed, right? And while I think I can see what that position means, and I can see where it applies in some cases, I think people are too quick to Mott and Bailey that, and say therefore like whatever like truth I
your
disagree
truth as a white oppressor is not the same as my truth as a oppressed minority or whatever.
And like then I've heard somebody say like, oh yeah, and because you know, science was mostly white guys in the past, that means it's all white bullshit. I'm like, you go to the top of a building and drop something and tell me how fast it falls. Like, you know, you don't have to be, you can do this wearing a blindfold. You can do this being, you know, a three-legged Martian. Like, it doesn't matter, right?
I saw someone arguing against vaccines using that very thing, that this is all old white dudes, which we can't trust because it's old white
so I think
facts or
like,
whatever.
It conflates like...
At my last job, I was working on vaccines.
That's awesome.
Just saying. I am white.
That's true, but not old.
Right, you're not an old guy. We're back in culture war stuff.
But
sorry. No, it's totally fine. But I guess all I will say is that like there are definitely things to where statements of proposed fact, of purported fact, can be completely obscured by cultural lensing, and others in which they completely really can't. Like, again, the speed of gravitational acceleration on Earth, it doesn't matter who's measuring that. Yeah. If it did turn out that for whatever reason, if you had a black scientist and a white scientist drop things off of a building, they each dropped 10-pound bowling balls and they fell at different rates, that would be a bizarre scientific finding on its own, right?
Dude, that would be awesome. You could manipulate the laws of physics based on the color of the person.
Right. It's like easier, like faster than light travel is possible, but only if you're of Asian descent or something.
Seriously.
So yeah, so there's like statements of like physics that are unchallengeable, but I mean,
I think this is more kind of there's a lot of drug safety tests that have only been done in healthy white males.
Right.
Yeah. No, that's a good point. And so that's I think a good mid-level example of on this kind of scale I'm picturing in my head. And at the other end, it could just be like, you know, the fact that like, oh no, you should call the cops if you're in trouble or if there's an emergency. Like that's, I mean, the long version of that fact has a bunch of contingencies that are implicit for the person making that statement. But for other people, it's like, I'm never going to call the cops to come to my house, right? So, and for good reason. And that's just like, no, that's, and it's not just like culture. It's just also like, no, the lived experience of me and everybody I know says that's a terrible idea. There are less inflammatory examples, but anyway, whatever.
Yeah.
So, yeah, man. Who's next?
Okay, so that's the one that says, David talked about something related to a debt to society, and Inyash's answer reminded me of one of my treasured SSC post burdens.
Sorry, can I interject? And you kind of mumbled the name. You said just reply this shit. It sounded like you were saying just reply that shit. Like
Oh,
the Reddit username of this person was just to reply
this shit.
Yes.
That
So,
is all one word, and that is the person's name. So just to reply this shit says, David talked about something related to a debt to society, and Inyash's answer reminded me of one of my treasured SSC posts, burdens. There's something else I've never said, because it's too deeply tied in with my own politics, and not something I would expect anybody else to understand. This is a quote from Burdens, by the way. And that is, humans don't owe society anything. We were here first. If my patient were back in the environment of evolutionary adaptedness, in a nice tribe with Dunbar's number of people, there would be no problem. Maybe his cognitive problems would make him a slightly less proficient hunter than someone else, but whatever. He could always gather. But society came and paved over the place where all the roots and berry plants grew, and killed the buffalo, and dynamited the caves, and declared the tribal bonding rituals problematic. Society got where it is by systematically destroying everything that could have supported him, and replacing it with things that required skills he didn't have. Of course it owes him when he suddenly can't support himself. Think of it as the ultimate use of eminent domain. A power beyond your control has seized everything in the world. It had some good economic reasons for doing so, but it at least owes you compensation. In the end, it's a disagreement of values.
very good post.
I haven't read that one, and I loved every passage of it. And can I just interject? Jesse read that like eloquently and articulately.
Oh, thanks.
I was reading along with you, and I wasn't reading it as smoothly as you were saying it. So you've got quite a skill.
Yay, I've been working on
It's good.
reading aloud.
Well, then props. I'm noticing.
I also really enjoy burdens, and something that bugged me since I was a kid is the idea that you can't actually decide to just go back to being a hunter-gatherer. There's no land that you can go live on. Like, kind of, society has come along and strong-armed you and is like, all right, you have to live by the rules of our system, go to school, and obey the laws of whatever country you happen to have been born in, and, like, you don't really get the chance to opt out of that. It kind of sucks.
Yeah, like there are even like just miles of open field and like basically prairie environment between like between like Fort Collins and Cheyenne, about 75 miles north of where we are.
Mm-hmm.
And there are buffalo, there are antelope. Like presumably, if you wanted to go out there, you could carve out a living for yourself. But that's somebody's property. The land belongs to somebody. It's behind a fence. I'm assuming the animals, not the antelope, but the buffalo belong to people.
Or they're, like, protected.
Right.
Yeah,
So-
like, everything's somebody's property.
Yeah, so you're right. Like, even like if nature's even calling to you and you can see it, it's like, but I can't because I'll go to jail. You can just look at it from this side of the fence.
Man, when I was in college and I was working and going to school, commuting an hour both ways, and that was just my entire life. I had these fantasies about just walking off into the Pine Barrens with a camping tent and a Bowie knife, and I read a lot of survival, like, Hatchet and whatnot.
Yeah.
And I was just like, it would be so tempting to just leave all this bullshit behind and just, like, go live in the woods.
You'd probably be able to for a while.
For a while, yeah, you might be able to. Because,
have-
like,
to have-
there's a lot of Pine Barrens.
Yeah, to have any serious life, though, I think, like you said, you'd need a tribe of 100-ish people.
You need culture, too.
And
Yeah.
that'd be harder to hide from people when you're living on their land. And
It's also hard to get 99 other people together that want to do this because, then
Or at
there's...
least to stop them from infighting. And
Yeah, well, then there's also, the disease and all the other things that people generally... And the lack of Netflix, that after a while people are going to be like, I'm going back to society.
I heard season 4 of Stranger Things was really good, so maybe it's because like physically that option's been off the table for me for ages. But like, I don't know. I always kind of find you mentioned like camping and like cooking stuff over a fire. Like
Yeah.
that sounds like a lot of fun. I want to try that and get a taste of what it was like to live as an ancestor. Of
well,
course,
let's go
I'll-
camping.
Yeah,
It's amazing. Like,
I'll give it a shot.
the jokes you're making about TV, you actually, like, if you're in the woods for a couple of days, you don't miss any, like, books, TV, any of that. It's so,
Yeah.
like, I forget who said this. There's someone who was a explorer. No, I can't remember the name. It was someone famous, but he said that like the only time in my life I wasn't bored was living in a cave. It's the only time that I've ever experienced like no boredom ever.
That's fun. It depends on your, I guess a lot of your set and setting there for yourself too. I remember when Sam Harris described his first like silent retreat for meditation, he was just like inundated with like crazy, like crushing boredom.
Yeah, but he wasn't. Well, I don't think he was camping and like gathering food and trying to build a shelter. I think he was at a retreat. That,
he was meditating
that stuff
all
was
day.
taken care of.
Yeah, that's a good point. If you're busy building a shelter all day, that sounds not boring at all.
It's so fun.
Yeah.
It's so satisfying. I went camping a little while ago, and I don't know, I just was like, I'm going to make a daisy chain. I'm going to make everybody a daisy chain. And for hours, I just gathered flowers of different colors and made different daisy chains. And I was like, kind of in like bliss. I was in like a bliss state.
It just occurred to me that daisy chain can be a literal thing and not
Not just a sex
No,
act.
this was not.
a sex
What?
act.
Oh, I'm sorry. What were you thinking?
I was thinking like where you lay like a series of steps along for like an argument, or like I'm going to explain to you like through a daisy chain.
I was
of
thinking about
reasoning.
Wi-Fi, but what is this
And
sex
you,
act?
and you were talking, yeah. All
I
right,
mean, I'm
you-
sure you can imagine.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay.
Okay, is all right.
Sorry.
No, you're good.
Anyway,
I think I'm picturing it.
back
It's a
to
lot
burdens.
of people doing things.
Yeah, but sorry.
No, you're good. Can I just plug in really quick then that I think anybody who thinks this sounds like fun or sounds terrible, really, anybody should check this out if you have 15 free minutes. Check out, there's a YouTube channel called Primitive Technology,
Yeah.
where there's no voiceover, there's no narration, there's no music, just the sound of him working. And it starts with him building crazy simple stuff like a hatchet or starting a fire.
Like not even a hatchet, like a stone, sharpened stone
Right.
on a stick.
Yeah, a primitive.
Most people, when
cut-
they
a
think
hacking-
hatchet, think like metal. You know.
That's right. Yeah, a hacking tool to make cutting branches easier for further work. And if you enjoy it's oddly tranquil to watch because it's calming. There's like I said, there's just the ambient noise of the work in the woods that he's doing. But if you want to take it another level, you put on closed captions, and he describes all the stuff that he's doing in there. And then they get to be really complicated, where he built like a house with like or like a hut rather.
Yeah, was that the guy that built the mud hut that had plumbing and everything?
I don't know about the plumbing. He probably has definitely done that at some point, but it also had the like thermal heating from underneath.
Or yeah, that's what I'm thinking of.
Yeah.
Yeah, that guy.
Yeah, he built like the whole thing out of clay cubes that he baked like the roof shackling out of everything that he baked in his own little kiln that he built by hand. All of it's really cool. So yeah, that's one way to do it. I think this is all from stuff in the area that he's working to. I don't think he goes and gets any of the equipment for it, like because all the
It
equipment.
looked like it was just stuff that was on site.
Yeah.
He was building with.
But I'm wondering, like, if the environment that he's in didn't have clay hot enough to build a kiln to cook these ceiling or what do you call them, roof tiles or whatever. But I think it did. So whatever it is, it's really cool. And if living in nature is your kind of thing, it sounds like fun. I have a friend he's big into camping and outdoorsy stuff, and I was telling him about this. And he was like, I'm kind of wary to watch that because I feel like I might just go do that. And
Yep.
he has since reported back he just enjoyed watching the program. He so far hasn't left society behind. So
So far.
Yeah.
Being the operative. Anyway, the post burdens, if you haven't read it, the idea behind it was somebody had written into Scott saying that they felt like a burden on society because they weren't able to do all the cool stuff other rationalists are doing, like align AI or make cool scientific discoveries. And Scott's reply was this society doesn't owe you anything explanation. Like, I think that this is actually very comforting for people that do feel like, what is my purpose? It's like, well, you don't have to have a purpose. You were here first. We did this thing to society. If you have to collect welfare because you're disabled, or if you're, going through hard times, that's like kind of society's fault, and society can take care of you. You don't
really
have to
think-
feel bad about this.
I really think the search for purpose is more a search for being meaningful to other people. Like
Yeah.
the fact that other people would notice if you weren't there and rely on you for certain things is very comforting. And when you don't have anyone that relies on you for anything, anyone who knows you as the person to go to for X or Y, it's alienating and your life feels empty. And I think that's most everyone in modern society.
I think of the like 3 or 4 like philosophers I know who make their living doing philosophy as like professors, I think a lot of them struggle with like nihilism and like how do I find meaning, because I've been, I spent my entire undergrad degree or years reading about how life is pointless because all these philosophers said so, and they all have kind of different approaches. One guy who I like the most is also just really charismatic and fun. The fun thing is important because I think he never said this, but I think that was his answer, is like, fun is how I make life meaningful. When I'm having fun, I'm in a flow state like it's just fun. So he plays a lot of games. He does volleyball, but a lot, team activities and stuff too. So there's the social component to it as well.
Like, rarely am I as happy as when I'm helping somebody move, because you're useful to someone. You are meaningful to them.
You're also good at it. I've helped you move a few times, and you move with efficiency.
Oh, well, yeah.
Doesn't matter. It was like a picture on Reddit of like a perfectly packed U-Haul, and the guy standing in it made me think of Drake, because Drake is the conductor for your moves, and he's so good at it.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, could I pay him to help me move?
Sure. I think he would be very happy to do that. Yeah, and I don't know. I suddenly had a flash to the original World of Warcraft, which is re-releasing in just a few weeks. It's a great game for giving you that sort of feeling of meaningfulness to other people, since they rely on you to be there to get their game stuff done. But like I said, it's not true meaning. It's a simulated one.
Well, are they real people or are they NPCs?
They're real people.
Okay.
They're real people that really need your help to do this dungeon. Like, you need 40 people all together at once working together.
I think you get some meaning out of that.
You do. I definitely got some meaning out of it, but
and I think they get the feeling of being helped. Yeah. Like, I mean, having somebody show you the ropes and, or take you through a tough challenge.
Well, don't get me wrong. It feels really good. I'm going to play the fuck out of Warcraft Classic when it releases. I just am now cognizant that it is eventually the game is going to go away, whereas in the real world, if you were helpful to people, they're still there as long as they're alive,
Yeah, but so is like and maybe I'm overstating this too much, but like so is the imprint of them, like, oh, that really nice person helped me do this, and like that feeling, carved into their brain a little bit, made them a better person, Yeah,
I still know some people. I still have grooves in my mind from some people in my guild, and like, I don't know any of these people's real names, so I have no idea how to contact them. But I'm like, man, Figrond was just an awesome paladin.
Yeah. So, can we get to this J. Thomas Morris comment?
Yes. Is it okay if we hit these two as well?
Oh, yeah. Go for it.
Okay. This was also from, just to reply this shit, mentioned that, I believe that's who posted this, because yes. I don't have any breaks. Okay. In one of Scott's posts, a commenter argues that they expect almost everybody on a basic income would quit. But then Ozzy brings up that there are various ways that skilled workers can work part-time to make $10,000 per year. The easiest way is to work a $100,000 per year job 1 year in 10, which honestly probably a lot of better programmers could do. Since almost nobody does that, it seems unlikely that these people would really quit their job in exchange for basic income. And I don't remember who wrote this next part, but they say, I'm glad Ozzy showed up because I used to think the same thing, and Ozzy reminded me that I wasn't taking any of the opportunities to work much less in exchange for much less money either. So I thought that was an interesting point.
Yeah, I believe that they were quoting, that was Scott, talking about something Ozzy had said, being quoted by this commenter.
Triple quotes.
Yeah.
Quadruple at this level.
Yeah, exactly.
There's the common argument against UBI that if we institute UBI, lots of people are going to just quit their jobs, and I think some people will, and they're probably the people that maybe are not working a job that's super important anyway, or I don't know, maybe aren't contributing as much as. Oh, this is coming off badly. What I mean is
they're bullshit jobs.
Yeah, I worked at McDonald's for 6 weeks. I hope that in 5 years no one's doing that job. Most of the time I spent as what they called in the store, fry bitch. Or fry guy. Where you stand over the fryer and you're constantly putting out fries. If you're at McDonald's, they're supposed to be cooked no more than 7 minutes before they're handed out the window or to the person. So there's always somebody standing over this grill or this grease bucket putting in fries and standing there getting all the hot waves of it in their face. And that's a job that like I can
outsource that to robots, please.
Yeah, and I can imagine somebody enjoys that, like, but there are other things that they could do that they'd enjoy more, like maybe doing it at their house for their friends rather than doing it under the high pressure environment where all the machines are screaming at them.
For 8 hours a day, 5 days a week.
Yeah.
Yeah.
or for slightly under that, so that you don't get paid benefits.
God.
Yeah, for 34 hours a week. But I remember this is tangential. I was in a conversation with somebody for like 30 minutes about UBI and how people wouldn't find meaning without jobs and stuff. And this was over like Messenger, so we weren't like, this would have been handled in under 2 minutes probably in real life, but because this was back and forth over a text chain, I finally just was like, wait a minute, why are we talking about it like it's the end of like productivity or jobs? Like if you're gonna be miserable without work, then like keep working.
Yeah.
You know.
And also, were you chatting over Messenger while you were at work?
No.
Oh, okay.
I think I
Because that would have been a beautiful, ironic twist.
That would have been nice. No. I'm happy to say it, certainly at this job, I tend like I've barely even been on Reddit this week, and it sounds like I have a problem. But no, I mean, like when I'm at this job, I try to be productive the entire time, and I'm usually busy.
Cool.
Today was kind of annoying because I was basically stuck on something for the second half of the day, so I couldn't be productive, and I didn't even really have the energy to like develop myself. Like, oh no, I've got right now 30 something tabs open on different Chrome windows. Like, I'm gonna get around to reading these eventually. I didn't even read any of those. Like, I was just, so that was my bad. But anyway, yeah, productivity, work stuff, total side point. So
Yeah, I think the other point is that 10K a year is not living large.
right,
I mean, you
it's
could
not
do it.
really it's barely living.
You could live on it, but a lot of people probably will take that 10K and then also work, maybe not 40 hours, but maybe 30 or 20.
Yeah.
Yeah, but you put that
In order
10K on top
to-
of the 17K a year you're making from McDonald's, and boom, you're suddenly living at almost twice the capacity that you're living at before, you know? You're able to, like, buy groceries and go out to eat once a week or something.
If your boss is a sexually harassing asshole, you can tell him to stuff it.
Right.
Yeah, that's the other thing. You have mobility now. You've got your 10K that you can go take somewhere else, or you can go back to school. Like, it opens up a lot of opportunities for you.
Yeah. I think it would make a lot of employers have to act a lot better.
Which would be great.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, you said you wanted the J. Thomas Moros?
Yeah, this was another one about UBI. I wanted to read this because I think I agree with all of it. J. Thomas Morris says, several points that I would have liked to hear brought up that weren't. 1. Humans are generally bad at managing uneven income. A single check at the end of the year, when you file your taxes and get an NIT tax payment, could be much worse for low-income people than a monthly check.
I can attest to that from personal experience or personal observation of people who come from like low income or like low financial stability households. I watched somebody getting it like a modest inheritance of like, I think maybe $15,000 or $20,000 from a grandparent or something, and they bought a new car, and it's like, that's great. And they were driving around a clunker before that, and like, just buy a better clunker and put $15,000 away. You'll have more money than your parents' combined savings. Like, but there's the problem that like, when you grow up in a scarcity environment, it's like, this resource could go away. I need to utilize it right. I think we've talked about this a bit before.
Yeah.
And I mean, that's a problem it often does. If you have loved ones that need money, what are you going to do? Not give it to them?
Right.
Yeah. So if you don't spend it right away, it could very well be gone before you can spend it at all.
Yeah.
Yeah, and if you put it in a new car, it's still there. You could liquefy it again.
Yeah, I'd have to. But yeah, exactly. It's not a good investment, but it is a
No.
thing, and it's something that you got out of it. It's not just gone.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
I mean, I'm assuming this person still has this car. If they took care of it right, it'll last them for 15 years. You know, so like they've got a safe and sound thing out of it. So.
So, 2, consider people who don't expect to receive an NIT payment this year, but then have a sudden job loss. Under UBI, this person will automatically receive their UBI payment on time, on the expected date next month. They can count on it. They don't have to do anything to get it. An NIT may not pay out until the end of the year. This would be disastrous for the many Americans with no savings.
That's a damn good point, and 2 great reasons, I think, to have a UBI rather than an NIT.
Yeah.
I suppose my mental model of David Spearman would say that implementing an NIT on like the monthly basis would increase the overhead cost, which would decrease the amount that you get, or increase the amount that you'd have to pay that other people have to pay into it or something. So I think that would be the counter argument, but I don't know what they would say, or what he would say rather, about those particular objections. Because I agree. Those are good points.
And then they go on to say, while I am a fan of UBI, I have some concerns about how it would play out in practice. 1, a UBI should really replace many government welfare programs. Exceptions include services for mentally handicapped and others. This replacement is what would enable the UBI to save money and eliminate disincentives to marginal income that exist in the current program. However, it seems very unrealistic to me that the American political system will ever be able to achieve this.
Damn shame.
For the record, I think that's Yang's idea. Andrew Yang, the presidential candidate.
To replace?
Yeah.
Oh.
So if you're getting Social Security, or excuse me,
Oh.
it's you get to pick.
Yeah.
If you're on Social Security and your total benefits are $1,200 a month, then you don't get UBI.
Right.
If they're $800 a month, hey, scrap your crappy Social Security and grab UBI. You're making another $200 a month.
Yeah.
So I do agree with the caveats for people, using them for additional services, that kind of thing. So.
Right.
Yeah, and then the second concern was setting the level of UBIs is very problematic. First, it's hard to know what a good level to set it to is. Worse than that, though, adjusting it will be a political issue that the politicians can argue over and mess up. Look at minimum wage laws. In many localities, the minimum wage isn't indexed to anything. It stays constant, eroding the spending power of those making minimum wage year after year, until the politicians finally decide to change it. Then they may raise it too much or too little. I think indexing is avoided because the politicians want to be able to argue over it. Even if it's indexed, it's subject to change by the politicians at any time. UBI should be a basis for financial stability. It isn't clear to me that this would be the case, which,
The problem with the government is that it's run by people in the government. And I agree.
I still would rather have it than not, and have it be argued over. But, yeah, I mean, I'm not saying that there aren't going to be problems with it. There certainly are, just, I think, fewer problems than...
The amazing thing is that Social Security is basically a UBI for people over 65, and yet it still works. Like, all these issues also apply to Social Security, but people seem to think it is not terrible, right?
Well, at least, like, morally, it seems like people think that people over 65 have earned it, which some of them have.
But I mean, more to the point, like, that also has the same problem of eroding spending power, not being indexed to anything. Politicians can change it at any time, but they don't. It's like this third rail of politics that if you try to touch it, you get lynched.
Yeah. Well, the over 65 crowd has power.
Yeah.
I mean,
Yeah.
that's a big voting bloc.
They have nothing. They have all the time in the world to vote, which is kind of, I think it was a John Mulaney joke about, like, they also vote on things that, like, definitely won't impact them, like electing people who don't care about climate change or something. And he's like, that's bullshit. You don't get to order for the table and then leave.
Yeah.
But yeah, certainly that is interesting. That's a good point. That does stay pretty solid. But per the point of the commenter, like, I think if you're dependent on your UBI, like, to pay your bills, and it could fluctuate based on the outcomes of the midterm election down to $500 a month or something, like, that could devastate you financially.
But there are a number of issues which some politicians are even scared to touch because they know if they do anything wrong on this subject, the people in their district will out them in a hot second.
Yeah.
UBI could become like that if everyone counts on their UBI.
I could easily see that person if it drops 500, like, rioting.
Yeah.
That would have happened to a bunch of people in that county, and then they're going to be on the governor's ass or whoever's.
I wonder.
That might be something that politicians are hesitant to touch. And then also the politicians themselves would be getting it too. Like, kind of, the joke I was going to make was that also the above 65 crowd probably is a lot of the politicians as well.
They're not collecting Social Security, though, if they're active
Yeah.
politicians. But,
Aren't they?
well,
Their families maybe, and
Yeah.
I don't. Yeah, I think they're not prohibited from collecting it, are they?
I don't think so.
Maybe it depends on
As long as
the,
they're over 65, I think they can take it.
they probably can take it, but I mean, if you're, I'm assuming I don't know how much a congressperson makes, but I imagine.
Jack shit, really.
Really?
Oh yeah, they don't make very much at all.
Well, on their paychecks. Maybe that's why
Right.
they're so incentivized to take bribes and
I mean,
all that sort of
I
stuff.
think that was I don't remember who proposed it. Probably Brian Kaplan or Robin Hanson, one of those crowd. But someone proposed, we really should make it illegal to take jobs after you've served in the public sector, and also jack up these guys' wages by at least 10 times more than they're making right now, because it's really crap all compared to basically anyone working in the private sector at a comparable level.
I did find that since 1984, all members of Congress have paid into Social Security and are eligible for the same benefits that all participants receive.
Nice. I'm curious what the history is behind Social Security, about how it attained that kind of holy status, because I could imagine it being highly contested at the time. And
I feel like respect for elders is, I mean, going back to the cultural evolution essay, Like, we as a species have this reverence for elders, and particularly, if you consider someone who's been in the system working for 65 years, or probably not the entire 65, but
Yeah, I guess, but as far as the sanctity of like not adjusting the numbers or something, or like not saying let's give it a 5% less and we'll do this or whatever, because that there could be a reasonable claim about why that might be a good idea or something, but nobody makes them that I hear about. I don't follow, I guess, all the proposed legislation that closely, but yeah, you make a good point though, Jess. Maybe it did pass fairly easily, but I
yeah, and I would also suspect just that being a large member of the voting bloc, would be the reason that
that strikes me
people are
as the most
hesitant to mess
plausible.
with it.
Yeah, I mean, like, there's also, I mean, people are supposed to care about kids and stuff, but arguing about school funding is something that people are more than willing to do when it comes to, like, saying how we're going to spend government money.
Yeah.
And even people who will say, like, why should I care? None of my kids are going to school. That's like saying, nope, I'm not collecting Social Security, so why should I care if anyone's getting it? I get, like, maybe there's more reverence for old people than children, but I feel like our society kind of values both.
Maybe it just is that old people are such a powerful voting bloc.
That's what I'm thinking. Yeah.
I think everybody in the U.S. that would be a pretty big voting bloc too.
Well, if people got out and did stuff.
I mean, if everyone gets UBI, if it is you.
Oh yeah, exactly. Yeah, if that's a good point. If this is out there and then like the vote to change it comes to the public, it's like, all right, guys, you want to vote to lower how much money you're getting a month? Everyone's gonna say, fuck no.
I think we need to start wrapping up. Do we want to get one more comment in?
Oh, there's this one about deathists.
I was thinking that one.
All right, well, we can do that one, but I want to plug this, and maybe you guys can at least respond to it on Reddit.
Okay.
Somebody wrote in, because we talk about EA a lot, and they were like, hey, I kind of want to do this. How do I give to charity effectively?
Oh, yeah.
And we had a whole EA episode.
Yes, we did.
And, like, my 2 cents that I tried to put in the post, or in my reply, was like, you can find the most effective charities through GiveWell. If your metric is increasing the number of like quality adjusted life years of humans.
Yeah, that's givewell.org.
Right. And my other, like, I don't think that this isn't like me as an EA person, because I'm not sure what their lingo is for this, but like whatever cause it is that you care about, there are charities that are doing it better and worse, right? If you care about feeding hungry people in the United States, or curing a certain disease or whatever. I think I used the breast cancer pink ribbon example. Like all the what is it? Susan B. something.
Susan B. Anthony.
Yeah, the pink ribbon breast.
Susan B. Komen.
Oh, right.
Yes.
Thank you. Yes.
What?
A very different person.
That other Susan B.
Yeah. Why did Susan B. Anthony sound familiar? Who's that?
She was almost on the quarter because she was one of the first women that ran for president, right? Among other things, she was a suffragist. Is that how you pronounce it?
Yeah.
Okay, yes, I knew the name, and I'm glad that it dinged a bell in my head, and I didn't bother to check which one. But yeah, I'm not sure what the numbers are, but most of their money goes to more ribbons.
Yeah.
So, like, to the extent that increases awareness, and awareness is a good thing, because it goes towards actual research, that's probably a good thing. But at the end of the day, that's big business.
Breast cancer already is close to maximally funded.
Right.
Like, more money getting put into that is not going to bring about a cure to breast cancer any sooner.
Probably not, right?
One of the
not enough that where you're really going to make a difference.
I mean, going to the effective altruist forums or discussion areas is not a bad idea, because one of the things they do often take into consideration is how well funded is this cause area. Like, is it something that could use more funding very well, or would the additional dollar not have that much additional impact? There's quite a few things to consider when making these decisions. I will say that effective altruists often focus on things like existential risk, like things that could wipe out the human race, because those are considered especially big and important.
Yeah, if you cure malaria, but everyone dies in 50 years from a meteorite impact, it makes a very small difference.
And they also tend to focus on things in developing countries a lot, because it's just due to the economics of the situation, it's a lot easier to save one life in a developing world nation than it is to save a life in America, where most people are not going to be dying of simple, easy to solve with money problems.
What I should have pointed out too is there's a great exploration of a lot of this stuff in Peter Singer's works on altruism.
Yeah.
And a few $100s in the developing world can give a corrective surgery for problems that would either drastically hamper your life through like physical ailment or through like social stigma. There are apparently some common causes of blindness that are very treatable for a few $100s.
Yeah.
That so like you consider like, all right, well, what would it cost me to get like LASIK versus how many people could I help with that money doing something else or something, right? So yeah, just the your money goes further where money's more valuable. There's the other thing that he points out. So I guess, yeah, you can check out Peter Singer's website. I think it is just petersinger.org or something. But his recent book, Doing Good Better, or was that Will McCaskill?
I don't know.
I forget. One of them did. Oh wait, Peter Singer's book was The Life You Can Save.
Okay.
Will McCaskill's book was Doing Good Better.
Okay.
If this is a subject you're really interested in, I'd recommend those books.
Cool.
All right, I realized it took up some of our time.
Oh,
And
sorry.
because I'm sure I'm going to forget, I got to plug something that's completely unrelated to anything.
Okay.
I've been reading the hell out of a crossover fan fiction called A Wand for Skitter.
Yes.
Okay.
I'm on chapter 61 of 61 right now.
Oh man.
And I started like
Ahead of
2
me.
weeks ago. They're really short chapters. Like
Okay.
I can read them in 10 minutes sometimes. So they go by fast. It is kind of full of typos that I'm going to ask the author if I can screen their chapters for them and fix them if they'll let me. Maybe even like just take them all, put them through like Microsoft Word and let them fix the obviously broken ones. Like this isn't just like the wrong there. This is big mistakes, but they're not so much that it ruins the story. But I've talked to at least one person who says that does ruin reading for them. So sorry, this might not be your book, but it's the premise is, well, this is a gigantic Worm spoiler. So skipping that, the protagonist from Worm wakes up in the body of a recently attempted assassinated mudblood girl in whatever the first year of Hogwarts for the kids, right?
In 1991. like
Yeah.
the first year of the original Harry Potter books.
Totally. And so she eventually regains some control of her bugs that she had from Worm. And she's also learning magic really well. And it's weird because I'm having to remember like the difference. This isn't Methods of Rationality crossover. This is regular Harry Potter crossover. So like there's not like a like fatigue that you get from using magic or anything like that. So I'm
okay.
trying to I'm watching this. I'm like, how is she doing all this? Oh right, she's not getting tired. She just has to keep saying words. But it's a lot of fun. My only gripe is that like the character never loses like this level of savagery that I feel like would be losable, but it sets it up in a way that makes a lot of sense. The other like break point from original Harry Potter is that Voldemort is having his lieutenants kill mudbloods before they start at Hogwarts, just like to thin the herd of them so they can start taking care of this problem before they're educated.
Yeah.
And so she's constantly on her guard for that because her like parents that she doesn't remember were just killed, and she wakes up in an alley in the middle of London or something.
Okay.
And so her level of like vigilance and like kind of savagery kind of makes sense because people are constantly on the lookout to like kill Muggle-born people.
Yeah.
But it was fun. It was a quick read, and it seems to be being updated like a couple times a week at least. So I've been having fun with that. The story is called A Wand for Skitter on fanfiction.net by author Shane T. So I had to plug that because I've spent a lot of time over the last couple weeks reading it. Okay,
Excellent.
back to your regularly scheduled podcast.
Okay.
Yeah, I think if we have time for one more, commenter delineated, I don't know, says, I don't want to disappoint, but deathists do actually exist. If you want your transhumanist self to be abhorred, take a look at the Ask a Mortician, which is a channel with almost 800,000 subscribers by Caitlin Doughty. I have actually seen this. They literally promote death positivity and death acceptance. They believe death gives life meaning. They're concerned about people who pursue radical life extension.
Yeah, I knew those people existed in there.
You know, what's weird is I did too, and somehow I completely like forgot about that when I was like, no one's really a deathist. And yet, I think it's just, yeah, I'll have to maybe actually check out some of the subreddit and stuff to see what they're saying, but I know these people are out there, and it's weird.
Yeah.
But I think they're not really considering the alternative in a way that's like, well, of course I would say that, right? I was going to say they're not considering the alternative honestly, otherwise they would agree with me. That's what everybody says about every position they have ever, so...
Now, I could actually imagine if somebody discovers the cure for death tomorrow, most of the world, I think, is immediately going to be on board, and I think there's going to be a huge backlash of people that have grown up and are very stuck in the mindset of death is good and natural,
Yeah.
and playing God, doing weird things is bad and unnatural, and it's, again, the whole, cultural evolution.
I would like to point out that this is a very, very common trope in science fiction and fantasy, and it really annoys me to no end.
Yeah.
A lot of evil villains are evil specifically because they don't want to die, and that's like almost the entirety of their motivation. Voldemort, to take the example we were just talking about, his evilness is that he doesn't want to die, and that is what is behind everything. That it happens so freaking often that I'm like, oh, look, there's a villain in this piece. I wonder if he's a villain because he doesn't want to die.
And they, make fun of them. They're like, oh, he's weak. He's afraid of death.
Yeah.
I'm like, yeah, so am I.
Yeah. It's
So aren't we all? No?
At
You
least
are.
Methods of Rationality gave Voldemort like more fleshed out villainy
Yeah.
than just like I don't want to die.
yeah.
Yeah, I remember that being Voldemort's whole thing in the original version. I had to kind of like think back after I read Methods, like what was OG Voldemort's motivation, and like you could be a magical non-deathist without being a complete dick, right?
Right.
I would assume.
I mean, one of the nice things about Thanos is that he wasn't like, I'm evil because I want immortality.
Right. Yeah.
There was some other motivation for once. It's like, thank you.
He was a good villain.
Yeah.
I even think in Endgame where he updates his preferences a little bit. I don't know if it doesn't come out until on Blu-ray for another couple of weeks, so I think it might still be too early for spoilers. But
Okay.
like I would argue that if you've seen the movie, his change in motivation, even like it makes sense even for him, and it's not him being like just promoted to like the level of like I am a bad guy now. I think it's perfectly in character for who Thanos was developed to be in the first Infinity War movie. Spoiler: Thanos is in Endgame, I guess. Was he in the trailers? I don't know. Probably. Maybe
mean,
not actually.
He was still alive at the end of the first one, so obviously he was going to be in the sequel.
That's a good point. Yeah. Okay. Cool.
All right. God, we're going to have to burn through the less wrong posts.
Sorry, I know. I got here late, so we're not able to. This is on me that we're rushing through these.
I think it's okay because they're not that.
But they're not super deep.
No, they're
No.
not super deep and they're not super long, so that's all right. But yeah, let's get through them quickly.
All
So
right.
we've got, are your enemies innately evil?
Spoiler: no.
So this is, by the way, a great example of the what is it? The Betteridge law, I think. Which not raw. They call it the law, but these are generally rules. That any headline that ends with a question can be answered by the word no.
Yes.
And honestly, our last episode fell prey to that. I think when we said, "Is rationalism being co-opted by the alt-right?" Ended in a question mark.
We should have put more capitalization in it and we should have made a 5-hour episode before we got to that subject to just make it true clickbaity fashion.
Oh
Yeah.
God.
Yeah.
Little subtext. Scientists are baffled.
Yeah. But basically, this post is saying your enemies are not innately evil. The first quote I pulled is, there seems to be a very strong tendency to blame evil deeds on the enemy's mutant evil disposition. Not as a moral point, but as a strict question of prior probability, we should ask what the enemy might believe about their situation that would reduce the seeming bizarrety of their behavior. This would allow us to hypothesize a less exceptional disposition and thereby shoulder a lesser burden of improbability. And I would just like to say, I also consider this a mark of good fiction. I kind of understand that lots of times when people are reading fiction, they want escapism. They want the Nazi or the zombie, the enemy who is irredeemably evil, and you can cheer for the hero punching them and killing them because they are evil mutants and they need to be killed, and that's what people want to see. That's fun, right? But I don't think it's great writing because in the real world, there's no one like that. You can demonize people to make them look like evil mutants, but they aren't in reality.
Yeah. Thinking of like Wheel of Time, which is the biggest fantasy thing I've ever read.
I've never had you talk about fiction and not mention Wheel of Time.
Maybe because I don't read enough.
Okay.
And definitely per page count, it's the biggest thing. Well, maybe, I'm not sure how big it compares to Worm and Ward, but maybe it's getting close.
I think Worm is bigger.
It might be. Well, it's definitely, I don't know.
Maybe.
We'll cross
They're
the numbers
comparable.
later. But in any case, well, certainly in Worm, the bad guys, with the possible exception of like the head of the Slaughterhouse 9, he's just a psychopath, but he's like the Joker in the sense that he's interesting.
Yeah.
Like and he's not trying to end the world because he's a bad guy. He's just like, I just like fucking things up. And there's other fuckery going on there that causes that stuff. But in Wheel of Time, the big baddie is the Dark One, who's like literally like the embodiment, although not even like quite physically instantiated version of like the dark side of the Force. But his lieutenants are basically the people that are the antagonists throughout the book series, and they all have their motivations, and they're conniving and interesting and all that sort of stuff. So I like that. I like this post too because there's like a watered down version of it where like, and I know we're belaboring it, but this is a good time to inject it. Like I've complained about like previous coworkers, like, oh yeah, this guy was always late, this guy didn't care about his job. At the end of the day, like these are people who are doing what they can, and like. I might have mentioned this on the show before, but like it was the senior guy that like never came to work and was honestly a terrible role model. I didn't really get along with him. Like we had nothing in common. And then shortly after we started working together, one of his cats died and he was like distraught over it. And I was like, dude, I can relate. And we talked about it a lot because he was dealing with it, and and like I remember having this kind of wake up moment where I was like, you know what? I don't have to like this guy. But I get him, at least on this level. He's just another guy who like loved his cat, and like I realize like that sounds shallow, but the deeper thing behind it was like I think that's the way it is with everybody that you're disagreeing with. Like there are people who are just leeches and are going to be mean like at work or something, right? But like nobody's innately evil. Very few people are innately evil, and I think there's always a way to like empathize with the person on a way that you can at least connect with them, right? So yeah, I won't dig into that too much, but. It's important for like not walking around hating people, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I think Elias makes a good point that if the enemy did have an evil disposition, that would be an argument in favor of your side. So any argument that favors your side must be supported, no matter how silly. Soon the enemy has horns, and if you deny any aspect of this on merely factual grounds, you are arguing the enemy side, and you are a traitor.
Merely factual grounds.
Right. Which, yeah, I see sometimes, and that is very disheartening.
Yeah. Very few people will understand that you aren't defending the enemy, just defending the truth. I've had this happen. It's very frustrating. Like, I think, Stephen, you had brought up people making up lies about Trump, and then you point out, like, that's actually completely factually incorrect. Like,
why are you defending Trump?
Some kind of Trump supporter?
It's like, no, man, let's just point to all the real crazy shit, because every time that we lie and conflate, then that's and that's specifically for this kind of example, but like then they can point to like, oh, see, they lied about this, we can prove it, therefore I don't believe any other stuff they're saying. But the real short version is like, and this was written 12 years ago, so 9/11 is a lot fresher in everybody's heads. He mentions like the hijackers weren't like these deranged psychopaths who just wanted to kill America because we're a beacon of freedom and they're mutants who hate freedom. They did it for what felt to them like very good reasons, and they were they were protecting their people. Yeah, and they were martyrs in their minds and in the minds of their supporters. But to say that, could you imagine somebody going on the news on September 15th, like, a couple days, like, while the dust is still settling, and being like, look, guys, they weren't monsters, but, and like, I think the climate of the time, people would have been okay with the person being dragged off camera and beaten, right? Like, so, yeah.
I heard people, like, outright give that explanation. They're like, yeah, well, terrorists, they hate freedom.
Yeah, that was the narrative.
I remember being a child and hearing that and being like, I don't think that's how humans work.
I was also a child. I remember hearing that, and I didn't have that thought. I was still at the age where I was just absorbing stuff, and like, well, if you say so. Yeah, it's a great post. I wish there's not. I don't know.
Yeah,
we're on a time crunch, and once again, to reiterate, that's my fault. I was late. So.
Yeah. Can I just read the last paragraph because it's really punchy?
Yeah. Sure.
That was, when you accurately estimate the enemy's psychology, when you know what is really in the enemy's mind. That knowledge won't feel like landing a delicious punch on the opposing side. It won't give you a warm feeling of righteous indignation. If your estimate makes you feel unbearably sad, you may be seeing the world as it really is.
It's good shit, man.
That's good.
Yeah, everybody that you've ever hated could be somebody that you like would have loved if things had been a little different.
This is why we read Eliezer. He's good at those. Yeah.
Yeah. It's. I think. How did you put it? Like the best. Like the highest. Like insight to word ratio or something.
Yeah.
I love that.
Next post is 2 more things to unlearn from school.
More things to unlearn.
And I think there's only 1 in here, but I don't know. Maybe I was conflating 2 together. Anyways,
I'm way ahead of you. I already forgot most of everything I learned in school. Okay. Checkmate, you Kowski. No.
Eliezer says, I suspect the most dangerous habit of thought taught in schools is that even if you don't really understand something, you should parrot it back anyway. One of the most fundamental life skills is realizing when you are confused, and school actively destroys this ability. Many students who have gone through this process no longer even realize when something confuses them or notice gaps in their understanding. They have been trained out of pausing to think. And he also proposes a possible solution. Maybe you could avoid handing students knowledge on a silver platter. Instead, show students different versions of physics equations that look plausible and ask them to figure out which was the correct one or invent experiments which would distinguish between alternatives.
I didn't get exercises like that until college. And it was never physics. I studied a squishy science like psychology.
Right.
But I remember, like in high school or in college level biology or something, they'd ask you like design an experiment that would confirm or deny this claim or something.
Right.
And it kind of sucks that you have to be in your 20s taking electives to get to that level. Or at least an elective level of education.
In most of high school, I had a few good teachers, I will say, and I think my parents were pretty good at being encouraging and that sort of thing too. But most of the things that I wanted to find out, it was like myself thinking, why is that? And then following up with questions or trying to read about it as opposed to being taught that in school. I think that may have worked out well. But the one thing I really, really remember to this day was in physics in high school. I had this amazing physics teacher. I was in the AP physics, so this wasn't like given to everyone, but he started us out on Einstein's photoelectric effect. That's what it was. And we thought we were just learning electricity and magnetism and basically that level of stuff. And he walked us through, we did the experiments ourselves, rederiving how to get E equals MC squared. And by the time you're getting to the end and you're on the last few steps before the final line, you realize what's happening and you're like, oh, holy shit, this is amazing. I have just rederived the most famous equation in physics and I see how it happened. And obviously it's not nearly as hard as having to come up with it on your own from the beginning and why is this happening? How could this possibly work? We had to kind of laid out for us in a garden path, but going down that path the first time and not knowing what we were getting at the end was really neat. And I wish more people would have experience like that.
Yeah, I can't think of any examples like that offhand, but they probably happened, I hope. But that sounds wonderful, and that sounds like the way it should be taught. The downside of doing it the way that you do it in schools now is there's no time to do it that way because we've got to teach these 70 things for the exam that the state issued for us, and you guys are only in here this number of hours, so we can't spend 20 hours doing this one thing. Right. But yeah, you still remember that, you know, and that's how impactful it was. Yeah. And that sounds fantastic. Yeah, I think that's the right way to do it. I don't have anything else to say. I mean, you could do something similar, you could do this with this is what the book The Greatest Show on Earth does, Richard Dawkins' book for evolution, is way belabored because he rambles a bit, but in a way that if you like the artful way that he does stuff.
Yeah, I found it just really enjoyable to read because I liked his tone.
Same here. Yeah, I guess what I'm getting at is it's way less direct than than you would do in a college or in a classroom setting of trying to teach the same thing. Right. But he has this poetry of and this passion in writing that I really liked. But that's what he does. He takes it the slow way. And so by the end, you're like, oh, I've seen all the things, not firsthand, but, I've read enough of the observations that were made to put this together. Now I get it. Mm-hmm. And it's not just some knowledge that someone told me about and that you're told basically take this on faith. It's no, I can follow the whole thing now. Yeah,
it's a short post, but has a neat point, and I agree.
I'm really hoping that future school systems incorporate VR or just really good simulations and are actually structured in such a way where students can do their own experiments.
That would be cool. Okay, for next week, we will cover the less wrong posts, making beliefs pay rent in anticipated experiences, belief in belief, and Bayesian judo. So we'll have 3.
Those first 2 are ones that we've referenced maybe 100 times total on the podcast so far.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, these are some weighty ones.
Yeah. Yep. Last part of the show, but definitely not least important part of the show.
Yes, one of the most important parts of the show.
That's right. We've got a patron to thank this week. Our patron of the episode. I know we say week, and we say that we do that all the time, but it's by week.
Right.
Anyway.
Of the fortnight.
Yes.
This
time on the Bayesian Conspiracy, our favorite patron of the episode is Wealth. So thank you so much for your support.
Yay,
it's
Wealth.
Outstanding.
You are the bomb. And yeah, we really do appreciate it.
Yeah, I made a fist pump. You couldn't see it, but anyway, yes, thank you so much.
Thank you.
Oh, I had a thing to point out. We mentioned in the last episode that like we met on Discord to chat, and like someone asked in subreddit, where is the link to this Discord? And David Youssef, who was our the person we interviewed over Discord, just posted the link on the subreddit. And I was like, oh shit, nothing was ready. What the hell just happened here? And people started like showing up and chatting and stuff. And so I worked real quickly. Steven promoted me to moderator. I put in a few channels. So now it's an actual, I guess, Discord server. But yeah, man, that thing blew up fast. Like there's bunch of people in there talking a lot.
And
I'm
a handful.
super enjoying it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And a handful of our previous guests. So if you ever wanted to pick a bone with David Youssef, he's on there a lot.
Yep.
Alexander Wales was on there day one.
David Youssef is on there. Is David Dark Lord of the memes?
No, that's the other David.
Oh, there's the other David?
Yeah.
Wait, what, so which David is they keep changing their names.
DN Youssef, I think.
Is he still? No, I thought that was... Anyway.
No, he's still Dean Youssef.
Both of the Davids are on there.
Good luck telling them apart.
Especially because Youssef talks about memes a lot. He
Right.
wanted the meme channel, so it makes sense they'd have the meme name.
Yeah, and he posts
alas.
there constantly.
Yeah.
Okay. But yeah, no, the bunch of people there, it's really cool. I'm having a great time. So thank you guys for that. We now have a Discord. So we'll post the link to the Discord in this episode show notes as well. And of course on the subreddit. And we also have a subreddit, so that's another thing. I've lately been arguing with people on subreddit because I haven't been able to sleep, which has been fun.
I need to be on the subreddit more.
Yeah, it's like,
All right.
you know, if you want to argue with a sleep-deprived Eneash, that's the place to go.
And I'll be active on Discord as soon as I can figure out how to let that server alone send push notifications to my phone and not everyone that I'm on.
Oh, okay.
I can show you.
Oh, okay. Then
I have
be on.
push notifications turned off. I just look it up every, a few times a day.
I need a ping to remind me to get in there. So,
Alright.
like, as
The
even-
only ping I need is the dopamine that I'm not getting by not being on it. All right, thank you,
Okay.
everybody.
yes. On that note,
And thank you, Wealth, again. Use also a ping of dopamine. Every time we do this thanking a patron,
Yeah.
we feel happy.
And Wolf is such a good name. Wolf.
yay! All right, everybody, this was great.
See you in 2 weeks.
All right, bye-bye.